Good morning, dear colleagues. I think that we are ready to start with our today's agenda. We have our guest speaker already here on the podium. So if you take your seats, we can start. So, dear colleagues, and the first item on our agenda today is the presentation of the European drugs presentation of the European Drugs Report for 2025. And we have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Alexis Koosdale, Executive Director of the European Union Drugs Agency. Thank you for being with us here today. And dear colleagues, as you know, the mandate of the agency focuses on providing objective and reliable information on drug-related issues, as well as recommending evidence-based actions on how to address the challenges relating to the drugs. Mr. Koosdale will present to us the main findings of this year's European Drug Report, which was published in June, and provides an overview of the drug situation in Europe up to the end of 2024. And after the presentation, we will continue with discussion, question and answers session. So, sir, the floor is yours, and you have about 10 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here again presenting the last trends to the LIBE committee. Of course, it's a very special moment for me as it's also the end of my second mandate. And I would like first to start thanking the LIBE committee and the European Parliament for their permanent support. I think since my 10 years ago, actually, when I was here for the hearing after the decision of the board to appoint me, you provided me with full support, with, of course, a high level of expectations. And I must say that if we have a new mandate, if we have a new agency and a strengthened capacity to be more useful for EU citizens and institutions, it is thanks to your support. And also, I think your role, among other things, regarding the area of freedom, security and justice is of particular relevance and interest when we speak about the drug phenomenon. What I will do now is to present you an overview of the situation. This report was the 30th report that we have been producing since the agency was created, with the regulation was adopted in 1993. There is a more than ever fast-changing situation. We see rapid drug market shifts, but also an increase in intimidation and violence. Increasingly vulnerable young people are involved, and I will come back to this issue in a few minutes. What is now really widespread, we had some indications already some years ago, 20 years ago, but today it's really standard practice, what we call polysubstance use. And finally, the rise over the last 27, 28 years of what we call the new psychoactive substances or the NPS that we detect through the European early warning system on new psychoactive substances is continuing to grow. At the end of December last year, as a total, we had detected 1,000 new substances appearing for the first time on the European drug market over the last 27 years, and it continues. Which means new substances, not yet considered as drugs, but with new risks and new harms for the users. So those are some of the main challenges that we are facing in the current situation. We also see, as you can even see when you look at the situation and the news in your country or here in Brussels, is that the drug flows don't stop. We never had so many substances either being produced on the territory of the European Union or arriving on the territory of the EU. There is an increase in the production of synthetic drugs on the EU territory, but also cross-border trade. And when we speak about cross-border trade, actually it's not only about drugs or substances, but the equipment that is being used to create illicit laboratories and to make them operate. And also associated to this is the increase in the diversion of chemical precursors. At the same time, and in parallel over the last 20 years, we've seen the evolution of the online platforms, which are covering not only darknet. Actually, darknet, we have noticed, we have detected a reduction in the use of darknet for drug trafficking, but the surface web is getting much more traction than what it was before. If we look now at one of the major problems we are facing in Europe, and even here in Brussels, you can see that almost every day that there are episodes with guns, with weapons and violence. What we see is a huge increase in drug-related violence in Europe, which is the reason why we have last year, as the first initiative being part of the new mandate of the agency, we organized here in Brussels the first European conference on drug-related violence. That's a major issue that may and probably started already to become a game changer for drug policy in Europe and in the member states. What we see also is that we have now a major problem with stimulants. And when I say that, I refer first, of course, to cocaine and crack cocaine. In 2023, there were 419 tons of cocaine that have been seized. We increasingly also find illicit laboratories that are completing the last phase of the processing from the pasta base to cocaine on the territory of the EU. We also observe more and more health and social harms that are related, and we consider that it's really an underestimate, given that the data for cocaine-related overdose, I think we don't have a 100% coverage, but we consider that at least 25% of overdoses and death from overdoses in Europe are caused in combination with cocaine, crack, and other substances. Just an illustration, in the Tomorrowland Music Festival, this year there were 2 deaths from overdose. I don't have the final results, but what was suspected during the festival, the preliminary results were suggesting that this was a combination of cocaine and highly dosed MDMA or ecstasy. We also see an increase in the seizures of the precursors, the chemical precursors. In 22, there were 54 tons that had been seized, and we reached 178 tons seized in 2023. There were 37 tons of catenones. Catenones is a variety of synthetic stimulants that are usually or mostly consumed through injection, and they are the cause of concern either locally or nationally or at the level of cities in many places in Europe. And then we see an increase in the production of ecstasy and methamphetamines, even if we consider that most of this production for the moment is still for export outside the EU. Last but not least, when we talk about stimulants, is the fact that the presence of those illicit laboratories for the production of those stimulants has a very damaging impact on the environment. What we also observe is that, and I think it's important or useful for the committee to know that what we see is that with this increase in the availability and consumption of any kinds of substances, whether they are already registered as drugs or not, what we see is that there is a tendency for a way of life, augmented way of life for human beings, to use various kinds of substances for coping with the difficulties in their life or in their work or for a recreational purpose. And obviously, all those people who are using drugs are not necessarily drug users. Those who use substances, they are not necessarily addicted, which means that it's time for us to look differently at this much broader population than as it was 30 years ago, a more limited group of people who had the problem of addiction using or injecting heroin. Today, it's a more widespread problem related to the relationship between the individual and the use of various substances, which means that the way we design the programs, the way we design prevention or treatment programs or harm reductions need to be adapted. Yes, thank you. One good news, partly good news, is that we see in the recent years with the SPAT survey, and a few weeks ago we have published the new report, the full report of the new survey among school population. We see that there is a tendency for a reduction of cannabis use, for instance, among school children in that age group that is covered by the study. But we have other worrying information, such as for some use of substances or products, including tobacco, an increase in the proportion of females that are using or using alcohol or tobacco, and some different group of substances. Which means, on the one hand, it seems that there are at least some of the prevention programs seems to have a positive impact. But the question that comes together is if in the youth or in the younger age group, it seems that cannabis use, for instance, has decreased over the last 10, 15 years. Well, we need to ask ourselves what is happening with the others who start at a bit later age to use all those substances that are now available. Yes? So this means that to continue before to say a few words about our preparedness, I think it's important to highlight a few important vulnerabilities, especially if I look at the last 10 years of my mandate as director of the agency. The evolution is we have an increase in the social and economic vulnerabilities in the population. So the first one is the polarization in the society that was already existing before the COVID pandemic, that has increased dramatically with a lot of violence on the social media, but also in the society with a negative impact also in terms of lack of solidarity, loss of solidarity, but I would say also in some cases, and I think for this committee in particular, it's certainly a relevant issue, is the fact that, yes, there are problems of violence. Yes, we have a major problem with minors that are derived or involved in indirectly or directly in criminal groups' activities. But the tendency in the change in the discourse, more polarized, is to declare the war against drugs, against people using drugs. And the risk, for instance, is that there may be a temptation to cancel the legislation for the protection of youth. I think the fact that there are younger people or minors that are involved in or associated in some criminal activities doesn't mean that we should put them in jail as from the age of 14. But we have a challenge because it's a question of challenge to our model of society and how we express and develop and support it. The second point, which is closely associated, is there is a huge problem in mental health in the population, increased by the COVID pandemic, especially among the youth. But certainly also in Europe, we know that in many countries, especially those who are the closest or that have the bigger impact from the war in Ukraine, there is an impact on the mental health in the population. But also what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in other places in the world, and the sense of acute vulnerability and the negative impact, especially in the youth, where there is also more uncertainty regarding their perspectives for future, but also a bigger concern among the youth for the environment, for instance. So, which means that in the larger social groups, where the youth in particular are more fragilized, there is a higher risk for any kind of substance use. Yes? So the question now, to reach the end of my presentation, is are we prepared? And I would say that we have some good news, but we have also some major concerns. Certainly, I would say, first of all, collectively, and again, this committee has played a very active role over the last 30 years. We have a European policy that is a European policy based on cooperation between the member states. And thanks to this policy and this cooperation, we have managed to develop what was called as the European model, or the balanced approach, where there is a combination of health, or public health and public safety. It's not always perfect, and we still have challenges, but certainly it's a major strength if we look at Europe compared with other regions in the world. There is the new roadmap on drug trafficking from the Commission, Protect EU, the new European Union, the future new European Union drug strategy. But we need to better understand what is happening with violence, especially in more countries. Every time we have young people who are involved in highly criminal activities, like last year there was a more famous case in Marseille, but it's the case everywhere in Europe. We have managed in Europe to develop some quite good coverage as far as the treatment of opioids dependence is concerned, but I would say that we have huge challenges for the future. First of all, we need to continue to develop and support activities that aim at strengthening the communities. And here I would like to highlight the fact that, as we have shown and developed, and we are working on the follow-up of the conference on violence last year, what we see is that we need to defragment the approach, because basically there is a need to strengthen the community economically and socially, together with prevention in the community, but also community policing and other activities. But also at the same time, we know that while we are more or less okay with difference of coverage still between the member states for the treatment of opioid dependence, we are nowhere close from a standard protocol of treatment for the dependence to cocaine, which means that it's time for us also to invest more in research, to find new programs, more efficient programs for dealing and treating problems related to the dependence of cocaine and other stimulants. We also, when we speak about preparedness, we have one tool that works very well for the overdose of opioids, which is naloxone. But here we have between 8 and 10 countries in the EU who still do not even have any legislation. So on the one hand, we have all the member states that are worried about what's happening in the US with all those people dying last year, more than 100,000 people who died from overdose with fentanyls and other synthetic opioids. But if the countries or some countries wait until there is an outbreak of people dying from overdose in their country to sit around the table to start discussing about the legislation, it will be too late. And we have the scientific evidence that shows and that gives all the possibility and the flexibility to the member states to adapt legislation to their priorities. Next one, I'm reaching the end. So in the conclusion, I would say that more than ever, what has been one of the strengths of the European model, if I can call it like this, it's to build and to support a holistic approach of drugs, not a hostile approach to our citizens. It should be based, continue to be based on the fundamental rights. And certainly we need also more and better harm reduction and prevention, and no war against people who are using drugs. And to finish, I want to say it was a real honor of my life and a privilege to serve the EU and its citizens and the EU institutions for all those years. I'm lucky enough to have been one of those who did the feasibility study of the agency 35 years ago. I never imagined I would have the privilege to become its director one day. And again, my heartfelt thanks to all the committee and the parliament, because all the improvements, everything we managed to do, even when we were already calling for the attention that drugs were still there and were a problem, there is one place we never had difficulties to explain and to be supported, which is in this room. So I want to thank you very sincerely for that. And I'm very proud and happy to pass the future work program to my successor, Dr. Lorraine Nolan, who will do a fantastic job with the team. We already prepared the transition, and I'm happy to tell you that the agency will be in very good hands. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gosdal, thank you very much for your presentation. And yes, taking into account that most probably this is your last speaking event at this committee, we were generous with giving you almost double time. But from now, I will be more strict with the time as we have several speakers on the list. So we will start with the question answers, 2 minutes per political group, and executive director will answer immediately after the question is being asked. So I start with EPP and Madame Dupont, please, you have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Mr. Executive Director, for the dedication and the hard work that you have been doing over the past years. Always happy to welcome you here in the committee. It has been a tremendous and good exchange we had over the years, and also thanks for your insights and your reflections, not only on the agency's work, but on how we can actually be better in what we're doing throughout the years. And allow me to dedicate 25 seconds on wishing you the best for whatever comes next. And for sure, we're really still counting on your expertise also later on. But having said that, and specifically because you had been following the agency, not only from the feasibility study to the implementation of the fully fledged agency mandate, while at the same time, the situation around the drug market, the increased violence you just mentioned, of course, leads to the constant question if we have the right tools at hand, also within the new mandate, that actually the agency needs towards member states agencies, towards sister agencies, towards the European Union. Is the agency placed in the right position also when we look at the JHA network, or can we, and should we probably think about a bit more, let's say, strengthening both the preventive angle and the law enforcement angle at the same time, which leads immediately to the question on can we improve the cooperation between the agency and also the law enforcement agencies we have at European level, specifically also looking a bit into the port initiative question. Thus, we also need a kind of, let's say, mirroring policy for the internal market and the products that are already not only within the European Union, but that are produced within the European Union. So what can we actually strengthen there, also in light of the cooperation with the member states? Second thing, I would be really interested to hear a bit more about the warning mechanism, also on new synthetic drugs that you just mentioned. Is it known enough by the member states? Is it used enough by the member states? And if not, what can we do there? And very happy that you also mentioned preparedness, because I always say that in the current geopolitical context we're in, defense, preparedness and internal security are interconnected. I'm seeing it. So what would be your recommendation when it comes to preparedness in light of the security situation? Thanks.
Thank you. And I know I'm putting you in a difficult position, but you have 2 minutes to answer. Please.
Thank you, Mrs. Dupont. Yes, well, first of all, I think the agency is indeed well placed. We have a very close cooperation with the sister justice and home affairs agencies. And also, we are preparing to chair the network of justice and home affairs agencies as from January. We have the meeting of the agencies early December, and I invited Mrs. Nolan to join me to be fully prepared as she will chair the network. We have a fantastic concept for the presidency that was developed together with the other agencies that Mrs. Nolan will come to present you, I think, in January, which is a very innovative way and directly follow up from the conference. I think we have, talking about the early warning system, now we have 3 different tools. The early warning system is working to the full. There is only one nuance, is that some member states take decisions for national level only on the basis of a decision for the European early warning system. Others don't. And I would say that the fact that a threat is not big enough at European level doesn't mean that a member state or even a region in the member states should not be in a capacity to control a substance. But that's really the full freedom of the member states. They are not always aware. So we got the question a few weeks ago from a visit from a national parliament asking why it was so slow. And I had to explain that the European process is maximum 6 months, which is much faster than any other international system. But there are some member states who have already decided to control some substances if there were a problem locally. We have also the new European drug alert system. We had the first meeting 1 week ago. What I'm very, very happy and proud to tell you is that my team, for the first face-to-face meeting of the network of laboratories, that is part of the new mandate. We had the first in-person meeting 2 weeks ago, and for the first time, we have been able to deliver to the more than 60 laboratories all over Europe a pack with the reference sample for the 10 new NPS. The problem being, the machines in the laboratories, they work with libraries. If they don't have the identifiers to the new substances they cannot detect, we have provided those samples for the first time.
Thank you. And on behalf of the S&D Group, I give floor to Mr. Lopez Aguilar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Goodall. Representing European Drug Agency, much of our interest. You know that we follow the track of your reports and we appreciate them because they are meaningful, food for thought, but also for policy making. 3 questions I would like to share with you and see your remarks. First, we've discussed the European Ports Alliance meant to put drug trafficking into the European Union to a halt, but certainly there has been a change of pattern. Using smaller ports, the drug keeps coming in. So I would like you to comment on the detected new ways or change of techniques used to and by criminals to get the drug trafficking going. Second point, it's been also discussed in the works of the LIBE committee for the last couple of years, the use of social media by criminal networks to recruit and exploit young people, adolescents, youngsters, for drug trafficking purposes. And I would like you to share with us the info that you've gathered on this matter. And the third point is how to reduce the availability of drugs into the European Union, particularly into the light of the upcoming EU drugs strategy presented by the European Commission. Taking into account that there is a widespread availability of a broader range of drugs in the present day, and the levels of reported seizures of cocaine have continued to increase year on year. What is to be expected? What's new, according to your knowledge and your assessment of the elements, of the component elements of the EU drugs strategy, which is to be presented by the European Commission? Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Senor Lopez Aguilar. Very appreciated. Well, regarding the European Port Alliance, first I want to say that I find it's an extremely good and important initiative. I attended the launch of the Port Alliance in Antwerp together with the Commissioner Johansson and the Belgian Minister of Interior at that time, Mrs. Verlinden. This year in July we had the second meeting in Denmark. I think we see an increased interest from most of the stakeholders, which is important because I think until 3-4 years ago, they were not really aware that this was a problem for them. And especially, and if you see the changes in the safety measures taken in some of the ports, there was a lot of work to do to protect the access to make sure that not everybody could enter in the ports and move and use, transform anything they wanted to make. So there is a very good point. But it's not the only initiative. What we see also is there is a working group between some European ports and some ports from Latin America, and I think that's something that should further develop because there have been some proposals for cooperation in the past. They were not always very pragmatic or really having a strong political support. I find the situation is different now. We have also MAOC-N operating from Lisbon, combining the efforts from some member states together with some countries to share information and intercept boats and ships that are transporting drugs. They contributed to a huge quantity of seizures of cocaine, among others, but not only. Now, what we see is that, yes, there is a change in the ports. There are more smaller ports that are involved, which means that we really need to look at all ports in Europe. And one of the topics we discussed in July, which is also a question mark, is it's good to look at the external ports in the EU, but certainly we have also a challenge with the internal ports, the rivers, the big rivers, the Danube, the Rhine, all bigger rivers that are also being used for drug smuggling and for which we don't have yet the same level of cooperation. And talking about the social media, I want to say that there is a lot of cooperation with also law enforcement forces for trying to deal with this issue. We have a special research project that is ongoing as part of the current work program of the agency in the next year to try to understand exactly how those people are being contacted and what makes that young teenagers suddenly, because they've been contacted through Snapchat or another network, decide that they would go to receive a weapon and try to kill someone they don't know, which is not a widespread phenomenon, but that's a problem we face everywhere in Europe. And this is one of the topics we have discussed as a follow-up of the conference of last year, 1 week ago, with our reference group for crime and market.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting, but we have to continue, yes. I do not see anybody in the room taking floor on behalf of the Patriots. So we continue with the ECR group and Madame Conco, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. I would like to welcome this presentation and also congratulate you for the work you have done and for the new leadership that is coming up. And I have a couple of comments as well on presentation and some questions. We are indeed aware and we see that drugs is a very big issue in our society and requires a serious shift, a cultural shift. And, you know, people who become victims or who are targeted as are young adults more and more. And we can see in Brussels, for example, that schools are targeted. We can see that in universities it's business as usual and there is a lot of peer pressure. And indeed, there are also mental health issues in society. So this is something we need to take into account. Loneliness and issues with child care, with teenager care. I just don't understand what Gaza has to do with it, so that's something I just need to put out there, and also to highlight the fact that organizations like Hamas or Hezbollah are actually very big drug cartels. A lot of terror organizations use a lot of that money to also finance their activities, as we see as well in West Africa, in the Sahel. It's going all there with Al Qaeda, with ISIS, with all these organizations who are using drugs to finance their crimes. I have a couple of questions. First, regarding the Port Alliance. It's something we're putting a lot of hope on. We're also increasing the cooperation of Latin America because the main issue is what happened before the boat even left to come to Europe. But we also know that a lot of drugs is produced here inside the EU. So from your perspective, after having led the the agency for so many years. What would you say would be the main priority in addressing that concern that drugs are being produced here? And second, about cooperation, the Commission will come up with proposals about Europol, about Eurojust. What would you hope for if you are still going to wish something for the person who is going to replace you? And finally, regarding the shift in culture, in your experience, what would you suggest that we could do to have this shift in culture, and how we as a society are dealing with the issue of drugs? Thank you.
Thank you. And sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First, regarding the Port Alliance and the production in the EU, I think you are right. This is a very serious problem. And as far as I know, the Commission is finishing or has finished its new proposal for chemical precursors. That is extremely important. I think the current legislation is, I would say, relatively old and certainly needs to be updated, taking into account the evolution in the recent years. And it is already part of our new mandate to provide more support to the European Commission for analyzing the existing and available data on precursors. And I think, if I'm not wrong, one of the first recruitments we made last year was to hire an expert to work with us on the precursors to strengthen the team. So I think there are initiatives. I'm fully aware that it takes time to prepare and then to have the negotiation and the adoption of a legislative proposal, but I think the legislative proposal that is prepared by the Commission is very important. What I can also say is that this is a topic for which we propose permanent support to the Commission and the EU institutions. There was the EU dialogue between the EU and China a few weeks ago in Beijing. One of the main topics that have been discussed with the Chinese counterparts was about the chemical precursors, and the feedback I got from my colleagues who were attending the meeting and the colleagues from the Commission is that there was a quite interesting and intensive dialogue. So certainly strengthening the capacity to work together on the chemical precursors is important. For the shift in culture, well, I'm sorry, I cannot bring a solution in 15 seconds. What I would say is that I think it's really time for us to look more broadly at what does it mean to be young or adult in the society today, and the fact that there are plenty of people who use either medicines, alcohol or other substances just to live with means that we cannot perpetuate or live keeping in mind that we are dealing, if I may use that word, with a small group of delinquents or people who do not respect the law. So the way we analyze and define the problem and the solutions need to be much broader. And at the same time, we have 5 member states who have decided to legalize the recreational use of cannabis. We contribute to help define indicators for the evaluation of those initiatives because except Canada, that has a strong culture of evaluation of public policies, I think in many other countries, certainly in the US, there are no evidence-based data that allow to understand if some of those changes had positive or negative elements. And next week, I will sign the cooperation agreement with Canada. One of the priorities is to have a closer exchange of information from their evaluation of their policy on the regulated model on cannabis.
Thank you. On behalf of Renew, I give floor to Madame Keller. Please, you have the floor.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Merci beaucoup pour votre travail pendant ces 10 années, cher Monsieur Alexis Gosdil. Heureuse de vous revoir. Mais ce ne sera pas la dernière fois parce que je pense que votre engagement, peut-être sous une autre forme, va se poursuivre. En tout cas, merci pour votre énergie et votre engagement à lutter contre la drogue. Je partage très largement ce qu'ont dit mes collègues. Il nous faut lutter contre cette violence terrifiante liée à la consommation de drogue, l'avalanche, la déferlante de petits paquets dans les ports difficiles à contrôler. On fait exploser les arrivées de précurseurs et d'autres produits dangereux. Donc la situation n'est pas simple. Et j'ai envie de vous proposer de nous faire une sorte de cri du cœur en cette date. Vous avez évoqué l'importance de la coopération policière entre les États membres pour lutter contre les trafiquants. Est-ce que vous auriez, vous faites un rêve, hein, une ou deux propositions qui seraient de nature vraiment à faire décoller, à accélérer, à améliorer cette coopération? Et même question sur les précurseurs, dont on comprend que ça a été un sujet de travail pour vous. Est-ce que c'est l'accélération de l'initiative de la Commission? Est-ce qu'il y a autre chose qu'on pourrait faire pour vraiment... On sait qu'ils produisent des drogues maintenant à partir de produits chimiques assez faciles à récupérer. C'est terrifiant parce que ça met potentiellement la drogue dans les mains de tous. Est-ce que vous avez une ou deux pistes de travail à nous confier pour essayer d'être efficace face à cette nouvelle forme de drogue terrifiante? Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Madame Keller, grand merci et merci à vous et aux autres collègues pour votre soutien inconditionnel. C'est vraiment très précieux aussi personnellement. Je vous remercie. Le cri du cœur, mais en fait, ce serait un cri du cœur en deux parties. Je dirais, il y a énormément d'efforts qui se font pour l'instant, notamment la nouvelle proposition législative de la Commission. Je pense qu'elle doit être présentée officiellement bientôt. Sur les précurseurs, il y a vraiment une urgence à renforcer la coopération et les échanges entre les États membres. Donc certainement, c'est quelque chose à continuer. Ce que je voudrais ajouter, c'est que ce qu'on entend, notamment ici à Bruxelles, il y avait l'an dernier le Forum européen pour la sécurité urbaine qui regroupe les maires de 300 villes en Europe. Et les chefs de la police, y compris les chefs de la police de la région de Bruxelles, sont les premiers à dire que oui, il y a un besoin de coordination, oui, on a un besoin de moyens. Je pense que la vérité, c'est les 20 ou 25 dernières années, dans beaucoup de pays, le budget de l'État a fondu, y compris pour la santé publique, mais parfois pour la justice. Le procureur du roi, ici à Bruxelles, s'est exprimé pour expliquer les manques même du système judiciaire. Donc certainement, on a besoin de renforcer les moyens, mais les chefs de la police qui étaient présents à cette réunion ont bien insisté sur le fait qu'un problème, c'est le manque de moyens et de personnel et de coopération, mais que c'est un problème de développement humain. Que beaucoup de problèmes qui arrivent dans certaines villes ou dans certaines zones urbaines n'arrivent pas dans n'importe quelle zone et qu'il y a des zones qui souffrent d'une grande vulnérabilité depuis longtemps. Donc pour moi, je dirais ce pourquoi je me bats toujours, à mon niveau en tout cas, c'est pour qu'on garde une approche qui promeuve nos droits fondamentaux pour tous les citoyens, y compris les citoyens qui font usage de substances, et certainement qu'on évite de leur déclarer la guerre ou de vouloir couper les allocations familiales de familles déjà vulnérables, parce que ce serait juste les pousser complètement dans les bras et dans les mains de ceux qui subsistent en tirant quelques revenus d'activités illicites. Donc c'est plus que jamais important et pour moi c'est une des essences du rôle de votre comité, ce sont les libertés civiles et les droits fondamentaux. Je pense que l'Europe doit continuer à se distinguer par un investissement qui vise à construire des réponses qui respectent la citoyenneté de tout le monde.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Greens, I give the floor to Ms. Brickman. Please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup et je me joins aux félicitations et aux remerciements des collègues pour tout le travail que vous avez effectué en tant que directeur exécutif de l'agence. Je pense que vous avez vraiment apporté à notre institution, mais aussi plus largement à la question, une approche modérée, interdisciplinaire qui va manquer dans un contexte où justement la tendance est à des politiques de plus en plus sécuritaires et répressives, alors que vous le dites si bien et vous l'avez rappelé dans votre présentation et à l'instant, notre mission aussi en tant que commission LIBE, c'est d'assurer que cette approche interdisciplinaire soit assurée, mais quand on regarde vers les États membres, les budgets d'austérité, les désinvestissements dans les services publics, dans la prévention, dans le travail dans les communautés, tout ça ne répond pas de manière adéquate au challenge que vous nous présentez, parce qu'il faut de la prévention, il faut des politiques de santé, un travail main dans la main avec les communautés locales, et puis bien évidemment aussi travailler au volet répressif et de lutte contre la criminalité, mais l'un ne va pas sans l'autre. Néanmoins, on va vers une législation sur drogue et criminalité organisée et je voudrais bien avoir votre input en quelques minutes, mais je suis certaine aussi qu'on pourra continuer à travailler ensemble et évidemment aussi avec votre successeur. Mais si vous pouviez en quelques mots nous partager ici vos priorités que vous verriez pour la législation, ce serait intéressant pour nous. Et puis aussi nous dire en quelques mots en quoi les politiques de réduction du risque sont justement importantes dans la lutte contre les drogues. Pourquoi est-ce qu'on devrait davantage insister sur ce volet-là? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And yes, please, you have the floor.
Merci Madame Bricmont et un grand merci aussi pour votre soutien. Je dirais concernant la drogue et la criminalité organisée, je pense il y a déjà une série d'initiatives qui viennent d'être prises ou qui sont en préparation. Je suis en train de prendre connaissance de la proposition de stratégie, de nouvelles stratégies drogue préparées par la Commission européenne. Je pense qu'il y a énormément d'éléments qui figurent déjà et qui sont à développer. Il y a aussi des sujets pour lesquels ce comité a déjà été saisi et certainement c'est une question qui va revenir, c'est la protection des données. Comment est-ce qu'on peut combiner à la fois la protection des données personnelles, la protection des données associées à tous les systèmes informatiques, mais en même temps permettre que ce ne soit pas au nom de cette protection et au nom de cette liberté que finalement les réseaux criminels soient les mieux protégés parce que leurs systèmes sont encryptés et que les forces de l'ordre n'ont pas les moyens. Et je pense qu'avec Sky ICC, par exemple, on a vu quelle était l'ampleur du problème, mais aussi avec quelle facilité ils arrivaient à communiquer. Et je faisais référence à l'usage de Snapchat par certains des tueurs à gages qui ont opéré. Il y a un livre récemment publié par deux journalistes du Parisien en France sur ce sujet qui est vraiment intéressant. Donc il y a vraiment un débat là-dessus. Comment trouver un juste équilibre, un juste milieu et protéger aussi nos libertés fondamentales en évitant que toutes les communications soient ouvertes et accessibles à tout le monde. Et je me souviens qu'un des débats et un des points de discussion qui était soulevé par mon collègue, le président d'Eurojust à l'époque, c'était aussi le fait de savoir quand il y a une recherche qui couvre plutôt plusieurs États membres, et des communications qui sont échangées à travers d'Internet, comment on peut lancer une procédure, parce que je pense qu'une des difficultés, c'était de savoir quelle était l'instance judiciaire qui serait compétente pour intervenir. Donc je pense que de ce côté-là, aider la justice à avoir, et les forces de l'ordre à avoir un accès qui permet d'anticiper et de lutter contre le crime organisé tout en préservant les droits fondamentaux. Je pense qu'on n'a pas de solution magique pour ça. Et quant à la politique de réduction des risques, je pense qu'elle est plus que jamais nécessaire et essentielle, mais en même temps, il est temps de réinventer la réduction des risques. Je pense le pire, et on entend parfois des débats qui vont dans cette direction, le pire, ce serait de considérer que c'est soit la répression, soit la réduction des risques et rien au milieu. Je pense qu'il faut intégrer et renforcer aussi l'appui au traitement et aussi adapter la réduction des risques aux nouveaux risques et au niveau local, intégrer la violence dans l'analyse.
Thank you. And on behalf of the left, I would like to invite Mr. Antoci to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much, Director. I will speak in Italian. Quello che ci consegna la relazione è un mercato della droga più resiliente e pericoloso. Non abbiamo più le cosiddette droghe classiche, ma abbiamo sempre di più un mix complesso che mette sotto pressione i sistemi sanitari degli Stati membri e la sicurezza degli Stati membri. Il dato della cocaina, 4,6 milioni di consumatori, ci fa comprendere in maniera plastica che la cocaina non è più una droga di nicchia e la sfida non è solo quella della repressione, ma è una sfida assolutamente culturale. E sono molto preoccupato degli oppioidi sintetici, del ruolo del nitazeni, per i quali ho fatto un'interrogazione parlamentare recentemente alla Commissione, per chiedere ancora strumenti più adeguati. Abbiamo addirittura delle difficoltà nel conoscere le cause della morte di determinate droghe. L'abbiamo visto in Italia recentemente su un ragazzo, solo dopo un anno si è capito di quale droga fosse morto. E allora, due domande. Per evitare di limitarci a fotografare un disastro che avanza inesorabilmente, a suo parere quali strumenti abbiamo bisogno per tradurre i dati che ci ha presentato in interventi tempestivi e preventivi? Sui nitazeni e sugli oppioidi sintetici in generale, quali ulteriori strumenti concreti in termini di supporto ai laboratori nazionali ritiene indispensabile per aiutare gli Stati membri a prevenirne un'escalation nelle overdosi soprattutto, e sui mercati online, alla luce delle evidenze? Dispone già di una cooperazione strutturale con Europol per lo scambio di informazioni e analisi? Ci può anche parlare di questo? Grazie.
Thank you. And sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, first of all, I agree that the spread of substance use, not only cocaine but also cocaine, is, I would say, it's part of a cultural change and challenge, both the result and part of the cause. So certainly, and I would say, we have for the moment mostly indirect indication of the increase of the number of people consuming cocaine, for instance, through wastewater epidemiology. But we know in the report we mentioned that the latency period is around 12, 13 years between the first use of cocaine and the moment where the user will ask for the first time for help, 12, 13 years. So if we see with wastewater and the seizures that the availability is still very high and the human consumption is very high, we don't know yet how many people it represents and how many people in 2 or 3 years will start asking for therapeutic help, which is something for which we don't have a standardized approach and offer of treatment available in Europe. So yes, it is a challenge. So from that perspective, as there was the question of Mrs. Bricmont for harm reduction, I think Member States have a portfolio of services and interventions they may use, and it's the responsibility of each Member State to make their own choice, but certainly to combine new or adapted prevention programs, but also involving the peers, involving people who are using those substances to learn better about why and how and which conditions, and also to make better links, which is what we are doing, between the countries and the program of drug checking that allow to detect, for instance, if in one substance there is, for instance, instead of that substance, fentanyl or nitazines, as you explained, and to be able to save the lives of people, even if we would prefer they don't use at all the substance. And from our side, what we do, yes, we have a cooperation with Europol since we exist, and since Europol exists, which was created first as the Europol Drugs Unit in the Netherlands, and with the network of the new European network of toxicology and forensic laboratories that we have created as part of the mandate. All the information is shared in real time, and as I said, what is very innovative and was needed is our capacity. For the first time, we delivered to all the laboratories, members of the network, the packages that will allow them to recognize those new substances. And I think that's one of the challenges, is to encourage and support the member states to equip all their laboratories with those reference standards.
Thank you, and once again apologize. So we have run out of time, and you were not easy speaker. You were not letting me to interfere with your long answers. But as it is your last time in this capacity to speak at LIBE, we will make an exception. So, dear colleagues, 1 minute really 1-minute interventions, and you will have a couple of minutes to answer. So I will start with Mr. Bjoch, please, 1 minute. Oh, excellent. We kept 1 minute. So on behalf of ECR, Mr. Inselvini, please, you have the floor.
Grazie Presidente, grazie al Direttore. Come abbiamo capito oggi, come sappiamo da tanto tempo, la battaglia contro la droga è una battaglia di libertà e credo sia una sfida decisiva per il futuro della civiltà europea e anche a livello globale. Noi recentemente in Italia abbiamo svolto un'importantissima conferenza riguardo allo spaccio di stupefacenti e in generale sul tema delle droghe col nostro governo. Ci siamo concentrati su 3 direttrici principali che sono quella della prevenzione, della repressione e del recupero. E rispetto a questo quindi le chiedo se non sia il caso, per quanto riguarda la repressione, di pensare a delle regole ancora più dure nei confronti degli spacciatori, della criminalità e nei confronti quindi di coloro che si arricchiscono sulla vita e la morte spesso delle persone. Il secondo punto è quello riguardo le comunità di recupero. Noi crediamo che si debba investire sempre di più sul recupero e sulla seconda possibilità nei confronti di coloro che sono caduti in questa trappola e le chiedo secondo lei come potremmo fare. E infine, l'ultima cosa brevissima, vediamo tutti i giorni che molti crimini vengono commessi da persone che sono sotto l'uso di sostanze stupefacenti. Le chiedo se ci sono dei dati specifici per poter combattere ancora meglio dei crimini che cerchiamo di combattere ma sui quali non abbiamo un quadro completo. Grazie.
Thank you. And the final speaker on my list is Mr. Arvanitis. Please, you have the floor.
Σας ευχαριστώ. Κύριε Γκούσλε, σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Από την καρδιά μου το λέω για τις υπηρεσίες σας. Τιμήσατε τη θέση και το ρόλο του δημόσιου λειτουργού. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Ήθελα να σημειώσω τώρα, επειδή έμεινε μόνο 1 λεπτό, και όποιος δεν έχει δει ή δεν έχει μπει σε σπίτι οικογένειας που έχει θέμα με τη χρήση, πολύ εύκολα τα λέει αυτά. Διαπιστώνω ότι δεν βρίσκω αναφορά στην έκθεσή σας στα στεγνά προγράμματα. Καθόλου. Τι σημαίνει αυτό? Σημαίνει ότι αλλάζουμε άποψη εντελώς, πάμε στη λογική της μείωσης της βλάβης, διότι τα μοντέλα θεραπείας των στεγνών προγραμμάτων έχουν συγκεκριμένα αποτελέσματα. Ο πελάτης δεν είναι πελάτης, είναι ένας καθαρός πολίτης μέσα από αυτά τα θεραπευτικά προγράμματα. Γιατί λοιπόν επενδύουμε μόνο στη μείωση της βλάβης? Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ και εύχομαι να μην χαθούμε ποτέ, να συνεργαζόμαστε πάντα.
Thank you, and Mr. Gosdell, you have the floor for concluding remarks and reflecting on these.
Thank you very much. First, for the first question, yes, I think prevention, when you mention prevention, repression and recovery, it's indeed important. I think what I can say is that there is a lot of efforts and investment in prevention, but unequally between the member states, not always evidence-based. Hence, new services and new training that we provide and will provide online, among other things, to promote the European standards for prevention through the Plateau platform and soon the Politeia platform. Regarding the punishment, I think what is important is to find a way to combine the fight against organized crime and avoid to recriminalize people who are using substances. Because there is no scientific evidence showing that if you penalize or punish more or consider drug or substance use as a crime, that it has any it has no preventive effect, and you may just end up by making citizens or teenagers enter in the criminal system because of the prisons and all the repressive system. But certainly we need better prevention, and for recovery, indeed, the problem, the need is not only to deal with the opioid agonist treatment that has a very strong evidence-based, but also to be able to develop, and we need more research, including at European level, for the treatment of the other dependencies. And Kyria Alvanitis, σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Συμφωνώ απολύτως μαζί σας. Νομίζω ότι το πρόβλημα είναι έχουμε διαφορετικές προτεραιότητες σε σχέση με τα επίγοντα. Και σίγουρα τα τελευταία 30 χρόνια ξεκινήσαμε καταρχάς με την επιδημία της ηρωίνης. Σήμερα το πρόβλημα είναι πάρα πολύ διαφορετικό. Έχουμε πάρα πολλές ουσίες και συμφωνώ ότι τα στεγνά προγράμματα έχουν όχι μόνο ενδιαφέρον, είναι μέσα στις απάντησεις και στο πορτφόλιο. Γι' αυτό η προσφορά μου ως διευθυντής του οργανισμού και με την κυρία Νόλαν, το συζητήσαμε πριν από 2 εβδομάδες, νομίζω ότι για τα επόμενα 3-4 χρόνια πρέπει να δώσουμε μεγαλύτερη προτεραιότητα για όλες τις θεραπείες και να ξέρουμε καλύτερα ποια είναι τα καλύτερα στάνταρ για το κάθε είδος θεραπείας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Dear Executive Director Gosdell, I'd like to thank you for today's discussion, but more importantly, on behalf of the LIBE Committee, I would like to thank you for your outstanding leadership and for your dedicated service. You guided the monitoring centre to a full-fledged agency, and this wouldn't have happened without your personal vision, commitment and collaborative approach. We are very grateful for that, and I think that on behalf of the LIBE Committee, we can say that we will continue close cooperation with your successor, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And dear colleagues, this concludes this agenda point. We will have small shifts on the podium, and we will continue with our next point in a couple of minutes. Dear colleagues, so let's continue with our agenda, and we will move to the presentation of Europol's 2025 edition of the Internet Organised Crime Threat Assessment. This annual report provides the agency's assessment of the threats and key developments in the field of cybercrime over the past year. And we are pleased today to be joined by Mr. Edvars Šileris, the head of Europol's European Cybercrime Centre, who will deliver his presentation. We will start with your presentation. You have about 10 minutes, and then we will continue with question and answers session. So, Mr. Šileris, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It's a real pleasure to be here, so thank you for invitation. So let me introduce myself. My name is Edvars Šileris. I am head of European Cybercrime Center at Europol. Maybe in 1 minute I would like to introduce ourselves. So we are Europol, European Union Law Enforcement Cooperation Agency. So we support criminal investigations between 2 or more member states and with EU and third countries. In total, we are 116 staff members, and basically we are covering 3 areas. So operational support, investigations, so all traditional cybercrimes, so ransomware, intrusions, to some extent espionage, also online frauds and child sexual abuse. And for sure, horizontally, we provide horizontal support of digital forensics. So if there is a need to access data, extract data, or gather data as evidences in criminal proceedings, we are here to support law enforcement authorities. And each year we conduct Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment with main findings what we see during calendar year. So for 2025, we picked up a topic about data because data is everything. And it means that it's not only about cybercrime, but all the other fields of crimes are fueled by data. And it's been abused not only in cybercrime, but in drugs, in terrorism, in financial economical crimes, in propaganda, in disinformation, and different fields. So let me start with first slide. It works. So how data is stolen? In general, actually, modus operandi is relatively simple. So it means that there are criminal forums, basically in dark web. Then we have different forums, basically in dark web, where people, sometimes not only criminals, can interact between each other in open manner without possibility to be identified by law enforcement or other agencies. Then they switch to end-to-end encrypted platforms, mainly platforms within social media. And there they can easily access data from different data brokers. So it could be info stealers, it could be malware how to steal data, it could be data per se, it could be some credentials from data credit debit cards, it could be your passwords, your, for example, accounts, credentials to gaming platforms, to social media accounts, etc. And then actually it could be abused in different manners. So it could become as commodity, it could become as gateway towards different criminal activity. And let me give you two examples, very, very simple ones, which are not artificial. It happens on a daily basis. Some medium-sized European company, on morning, they try to access their internal systems, and suddenly they realize that all the data are encrypted, and they don't have any more access to their own data. Then actually extortion happens. Usually they lose approximately on average, few million euros. Then actually they lose reputation, they lose data of their customers and internal access to their database. And surprisingly, they have never been hacked directly. So it means their data were leaked mainly through supply chain. And then they appear on these dark web forums. And that's why actually it's become a real huge problem, because you can be victimized without basically doing anything wrong by yourself. Some legitimate platforms, they don't protect properly, for example, your data, and then you became victim. Second, it's a new trend with generative AI, with deepfakes, with voice cloning. It's some kind of online frauds skyrocketing with ability to victimize millions of Europeans and broader. So it means that actually it could be easily reached by some online phone or video call where you are asked to transfer funds with voice, with image, which you as a person, you cannot recognize that it's fake. And you see a regular number of your, for example, CEO or CFO. And basically, as human being, you are not capable to find that it's not you. And it's scary because it's challenge main currency of our society is trust, because you cannot trust anymore what you can see, what you can hear. And it's challenge for law enforcement, it's challenge for society, it's challenge for victims. And how data is monetized. So it's second thing. Because one thing is just to steal data, and probably each of us we see on daily basis, for example, from our iPhones and Androids, some notifications that during last month, for example, your data appeared in 10 data breaches. So it means that actually one thing is just regular password. What is not so good that in majority of cases passwords are reused. So it means that we as human beings, we don't like, and it's almost impossible to remember 1,000 passwords at once. So that's why more or less all the passwords are similar for majority of size of society. So it means that actually they can be easily abused by criminals in different means. So they can create fake accounts, they can buy in behalf of you, they can take credit, they can act as you, and actually you will become victim without your knowledge. Other states can abuse this as well, and in the past it was clear distinction between state activity and criminal activity. Mainly criminals were driven by profit only, states were driven by influence. Right now, even states or some state actors are taking part on ransomware, intrusions, they are taking part in disinformation, spreading of fake news, with their own purposes, not only just to run fake online advertisement company or, for example, just to promote fake investment platform, but they have their own means, sometimes masked by this criminal behavior. No matter that both of behaviors are criminal, but purpose and reasons behind are completely different. So one thing. The second thing, actually, with data, in many cases, victims are becoming victims not once, because actually it's not only you are using fake credentials once, but actually it happens majority of the times. Many times, if you can explore, or the criminals are exploring as much as possible from their own criminal perspective. And profiles of criminal actors, what do we see? So it means that actually it's not, we had some kind bad understanding that cybercriminal is just one person with hoodie somewhere in the basement and just playing games. In many cases in the past it started from games, started from small coding exercises and small hacking activities, but right now it's completely business enterprise divided by sectors and divided by different responsibilities. In many cases, actually, it's one are data brokers. So it means that they collect data and they don't care about what will be done with this criminally collected data. They just start to sell this data. For example, if I want to buy legitimate credit card for €5, I can buy with a credit card which has €5,000 on the account of this credit card. And this data brokers, they don't care, for example, if I use it, how I use it, and where I will use it. Then initial access brokers, for example, I want to enter, I don't know, hack Europarlament or something else. So I look for credentials, someone who is connected to this institution. And then these initial access brokers, they don't care what I will do later on. They just deliver this service as a service. And then we have child sexual abuse and online fraud schemes. So it means that actually also way how to monetize, how to use in their own purposes, same kind of data. Challenges for law enforcement. In online environment, sometimes we as human, we like to compare online and offline. So in offline, we have public spaces and basically we have law enforcement who can act more or less independently and fulfill our duties properly. In online environment, basically we don't have public spaces. So more or less everything, all the environments are privately owned. It could be owned by institutions, but in general where people meet, it's social media and usually it's controlled by tech companies. And there, law enforcement, no matter that legally, in many cases we can act, but practically we need to obey rules and laws of this private company. And in many cases, law enforcement don't have proper access to data. We cannot assist victims properly. Also, in many cases, we are bounded by jurisdictional issues. So we have different jurisdictions, no matter that everyone agrees that internet per se is a phenomenon without borders. But we need to respect borders, and we still have a legal system which based on jurisdiction and based on land connection, if I could phrase in this way. So accessing to data for law enforcement is crucial. Also, cooperation with private sector is something that needs to be strengthened, and probably legal basis should be adjusted as well. And awareness and basic cyber hygiene is few things which should not be remembered and forgotten, because without it, actually, everyone can become victim and can appear in all these breached data leaks, etc. So with this, probably I want to finish, and thank you for possibility.
Yes, thank you, sir, for your presentation. And now we will continue with a round of speakers on behalf of political groups. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and after that you will have immediately the chance to respond, also for 2 minutes. And I start with the EPP group, and the first speaker on the list is Ms. Juknevičienė. Raza, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will switch into Lithuanian because it would be a little bit strange to ask Lithuanian in English. Dėkoju už svarbią ataskaitą, kuri, aišku, parodo, kaip duomenys tapo pagrindinė šiuolaikinio nusikalstamumo valiuta ir ko gero ateityje dar labiau aktuali bus šita problema. Jūs taip pat žinot, man teko kalbėti su jumis ir anksčiau ir matom, stebim, kad dabartiniam pasaulyje stebimas susiliejimas valstybių, ypač diktatūrinių valstybių, autokratinių valstybių, susiliejimas su kriminaliniu pasauliu. Tiesiog valstybės tos naudoja kriminalą kaip įrankį ir mes jau su tuo esam susidūrę. Tai demokratinėse valstybėse duomenų apsauga vaidina svarbu vaidmenį, tačiau esame hibridinėme kare. Demokratijos mes esam hibridinėme kare ir čia mums reikia rinktis, kaip mes galim apsiginti. Priešiškos jėgos naudoja tuos demokratijos instrumentus karui prieš mus. Ir nuo to, ar pajėgsim apsiginti, daug kas priklauso. Tai ar galite konkrečiau išplėtoti valstybių ir kriminalo susiliejimo temą? Kiek jų minai yra aktuali, svarbi ir ką mes čia kartu galim nuveikti. Taip pat noriu paklausti apie svarbę jums ir visoms institucijoms temą priėjimą prie privačių duomenų. Nes jūs minėjot, kaip tie kriminalas atakuoja mus, bet kaip institucijos gali prieiti prie tų privačių duomenų, kuriame gali būti jums labai svarbi gynybai ir mums visiems gynybai svarbi informacija. Ką galit pasakyti šituo klausimu ir kaip tai galima padaryti, ką mes galim padėti jums išsaugant demokratijos pagrindinius principus, laisvės ir privatumą ir panašiai. Ir dar vienas klausimas, kaip Europolas gali padėti ES valstybėms susiduriančiam su hibridiniam atakom, ypatingai rytinėme pasienyje. Štai paskutinė jų atakos prieš oro uostus. Trikdant jų veiklą yra naudojami kriminaliniai kontrabandos tinklai, bet taip pat naudojami ir dalykai susiję su šiuolaikiniam technologijom. Pavyzdžiui, kaip žinot, naudojamos SIM kortelės meteorologiniuose balionuose. Ir tačiau esmė yra čia, kad ta valstybė, šiuo atveju Lukašenkos režimas, naudoja kriminalą kaip įrankį. Ir kiek čia jūs galit padėti, kaip mums suvienyti jėgas? Ačiū.
Thank you. And Mr. Schilleris, please, you have the floor.
Ačiū labai lietuviškai, and now I will switch to English because probably only two of us can understand Lithuanian here, no matter that it's one of the oldest language of the world. So thank you for a lot of questions, I would say. So first of all, in the past we had clear differences between state and criminal, because criminals were driven by profits mainly, and state, they had its own intentions, collect information, but it was a bit silent activity. So they didn't advertise and they didn't intervene openly, just wanted to feed their own intention to be aware of and to collect more information. With cyber, with digitalization, many states realize that actually it's much easier to use cyber tools and criminal cyber tools as well. We saw in the beginning in Ukraine, for example, in the beginning there were 0 days, for example, vulnerabilities were used for the first time. And after 1 month of invasion, we started to see that same criminal tools which used for hacking of legitimate companies started to be used to hack governmental services with intention not to ask for ransom, ask for money, but actually with intention to disrupt, to erase data and to disable all the activities. Same, for example, we see that some hackers of North Korea, they try to hack crypto exchanges and to benefit from it. When it comes to traditional ransomware activities, 80% of known ransomware organizers are Russians. And in many cases, we see that during daily activities, they work for governmental agencies. During the evenings, they ask for ransom payments from victims. So it seems that actually it's a blurred gray area where some countries, not friendly countries, found ways how to intervene to democracies and how to influence our daily lives. So for sure it's a threat, and for sure law enforcement also needs to be part of response. Lawful access to data, actually, it's one of the key things, because without ability to access data, we are not able to assist victims, we are not able to protect them, and we are not able to investigate crimes. Because in many cases we can understand phenomena, but if we go in front of the court, we need to present hard evidences. So it means that actually it should be legitimately collected, and they should prove some circumstances what we need to prove. So in this case, actually, Europol plays a role when we try to explain to decision makers, when we try to provide some technical advice how it could be collected, because in many cases these abilities or ways how to collect are not standardized. So it means that each company creates how do they think it's necessary to create, and then actually we don't have unified approach. Also, imagine in country A, in European Union, cyber attack is happening. And usually how it happens, some servers are used in different country. So it means that in country B. So from criminal point of view, actually crime is committed in country A only. So imagine Belgium. But in some other EU country is where servers are located, and nothing wrong happening from legal point of view in this country. And if you need to access data in this country B, you need to go through a really lengthy procedure of how to obtain this data. So here I believe that Europol could play a role in order to faster gathering this kind of data, which could be used for future investigations. So probably with new Europol regulations, this topic will be discussed, and I hope that sufficient solutions will be found. When it comes to hybrid threat and, for example, this attacks in Lithuania, for example, regarding airports, for sure Europol we can assist, and we are assisting to Lithuanian authorities to some extent when we need to extract data from all these devices. Also, we can share our know-how, how it could be mitigated and what could be controlled through telecom providers. Because when these balloons are flying, they are crossing many different cell towers. So also there are some useful information for investigations there. So I believe that we as Europol, we are trying to do our best, and we are assisting national authorities. But main point for time being, Europol, we don't have executive powers, so it means that we don't investigate by ourselves. So it means that actually we should be asked by competent authority of national level, and then we can step in. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Schiller, I don't want to interrupt you, but we have many speakers, so I have to. Please try to answer briefly in two maximum 3 minutes. And with that, I give floor to, on behalf of SD, Ms. Sippel, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. The title of your report is Steal, Deal and Repeat, and I may start with steal. And we know that there are different sources where criminals take away the data from. So it may be the individual or the device of individual users. It can be, as you mentioned, the social platforms. It can be companies, hospitals, other actors in the offline world. Maybe also big data platforms from the European Union or from the banking sector. So do you have an idea what's the main source of all the data that then are a source for dealing and abusing them? Or is there an equivalent level of stealing data on all the levels? Or is there a main source of data? Second, the question is, how can we better protect? And do you have an idea to what extent official data banks, the platforms that we have on the European level, but also on the national level, are protected against stealing and hacking? And to what extent is this used by private companies? Are they aware about the damage that can be done, or is it that they are too relaxed and don't care on data security? The same goes for individual users. To what extent do we need more to improve media literacy so that individuals also do better care for their data? In exchange of that, I know that you have to deal with the laws that national and European level give to you, but isn't it a little bit painful if we were aware that member states and commission are not really engaged in implementing legislation? You mentioned, for example, the social media platforms. We have rules that they should follow, but we know they are not following all of them. They are not implementing European rules. Would it be helpful that we have more space to control them? The same is on if a damage is done. And just, I'm coming to the end. Last week I heard reports of citizens who were victims. Contracts were done on their behalf, and then the individual victim has to prove that he or she wasn't the person. So it's a change in who has to prove. So I have to prove my innocence. Why is this? Is it that our law enforcement is not in the position to find out? So how can we better protect people in case they have become victim, especially, but not only when it comes to financial effect?
Thank you, Birgit. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. If I may, I can start from the last question regarding who needs to prove what. For sure, a victim doesn't need to prove that he is victim, and actually it should be completely otherwise. But here actually everything is linked and interconnected. What I mentioned before, because in general we don't have public spaces in internet, so we act in someone's house, if I can say, for example, house of social platform, etc. And we can do only what they allow us to do, or there is hard regulation to do it. So that's why actually lawful access to data is not vulnerabilities, it's not a massive surveillance or something, but when we have legitimate request, we should fulfill our duties properly. And that's why it's a big gap here. And unfortunately, there is no easy solution, but I hope it will be addressed. When it comes to rules of EU, and for sure, they should be respected and they should be implemented. And I believe that there are enough tools to ensure it. However, I agree that it's not so easy. And in many cases, when you have big tech company, which is one is bigger than whole EU economy, it's a bit complicated, but we need to do our best. When it comes to where breaches appears, actually, I would say first from private companies and service providers, it's for sure. It's not from individuals, because, for example, my data appeared in a few data leaks, and all these leaks were no less than 500,000 users. me included. So it means that you can imagine actually it's how many personal attempts should be conducted if you want to achieve 500,000, and it's equal to one breach from one private company. And here, but the devil in the details is that competition. Everyone wants to deliver cheaper services, and in many cases they sacrifice quality and safety. So I really advocate for at least minimum security standards, and they should be respected, and only then actually we can prevent absolute majority of attacks. I would say that actually two-factor authentication and password, not 1, 2, 3, and I don't know, name of the son or something, it would save you in 99% of cases, unfortunately, or fortunately, but actually simple as that, but it's true. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see anybody asking for floor on behalf of Patriots, so on behalf of ECR, Ms. Kanko, please, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you very much. I was very worried about our security on internet and how the threats are increasing so fast. But after reading pieces of your presentation and hearing what you're saying, I'm even more worried. Then today we will not be able to discuss more in detail, but I strongly advocate for maybe, I'm looking at my colleague coordinators here, maybe a longer conversation about safety online, especially for teenagers and for businesses. And then I have 3 questions for you. First, I see that Europol is advocating for lawful access to end-to-end encrypted communication. You know, the encryption is such an incredible paradox, right? Because it's supposed to protect our privacy, and at the same time, it's used to break it down. And whenever you try to touch anything related to encryption, MEPS receive thousands of emails. Just ask the Danish presidency about child protection online. So it's a very complicated matter. How do you see that lawful access to end-to-end encryption actually work? Maybe you can share your views with us. And second, you mentioned the fact that, of course, a website hosting our data can be actually the source of the data leak without us doing anything wrong. Do you think there should be anything changed in European legislation, for example, GDPR, to increase the responsibility of protecting data? Because it's the responsibility, of course, of the host to collect data only when they want when they are able to protect them. And third question, international and cooperation and intra-EU cooperation. To be honest, I'm not very proud of how in our member states we are actually dealing with cybersecurity, because it's quite rudimentary. It's like, you know, like the Stone Age of internet. So how is the intra-EU cooperation working, even in your perspective from Europol? And when someone is abroad, like far away where they have other rules, and actually hack someone here in Europe, how is the international cooperation also going, and how could we improve it? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schilleris, please.
Thank you very much. In brief, regarding lawful access to data, and especially a matter of end-to-end encryption, I am convinced that actually it could be implemented in a safe manner. So it means that actually not breaking end-to-end encryption, ensuring privacy, but not anonymity, because in many cases it's a bit two different definitions. I strongly advocate for privacy, but not for absolute anonymity. So when no one is capable to access anything. So it's not about vulnerabilities, it's not about backdoors, but this transparency, with proper legal framework and legal legitimate oversight, I think it could be implemented, and actually then we can protect victims much more. In current setup, even the example presented previously, in many cases victims are ignored, and they don't have any tools how to prove that they are innocent and they are victims. Just ignore, and actually law enforcement, we don't have also legitimate access to this. When it comes to responsibility, who is responsible, I believe that more responsibility should be on provider side, not on consumer side. And for example, when we saw recently publications that some social networks benefited 10% of revenue or close to from advertisements about investment scams, etc., I don't think it's right. So that's why probably some solution needs to be found in this way for sure. And when it comes to international cooperation, it's a real elephant in the room because, as I said, we still apply old-fashioned regulation. I don't criticize regulation per se, but actually new phenomena needs to have new ways how to respond to it. And if I can, within 1 minute, for example, open 10 bank accounts, it shouldn't take 1 year for law enforcement to gather data about these 10 bank accounts. So if I, from one point, as from criminal perspective, for example, act immediately, law enforcement's response should be also immediate, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see anybody taking floor on behalf of Renew, so on behalf of the Greens, Ms. Brickford, please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Merci aussi pour votre travail crucial, mais de l'ombre, et qu'on ait l'occasion d'en parler aujourd'hui. Il y a beaucoup de sources de préoccupation, mais une source de préoccupation majeure dans le contexte actuel, c'est aussi les cyberattaques russes. Est-ce que votre service est impliqué dans la lutte contre les cyberattaques et comment Quels sont aussi les points d'attention que notre comité doit connaître? Il faut clairement une meilleure protection en ligne, mais aussi de l'information. C'est à la fois Europol, mais aussi la Commission européenne. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas intérêt, et de manière assez urgente, à informer les consommateurs, les entreprises, les utilisateurs individuels et à davantage renforcer leur protection en ligne par des gestes simples, comme ceux des mots de passe, mais j'ai l'impression que dans l'opinion publique, il y a encore une large part de « je suis sur les plateformes, je partage mes données, mes photos, mes informations » et ça reste un sens commun alors qu'il est urgent qu'on se protège en ligne comme il faut. Et à ce titre, les réponses qu'on reçoit généralement restent assez rhétoriques sur la question du cryptage des données, parce que lever le cryptage, et je partage les préoccupations des collègues, c'est aussi créer plus d'opportunités pour les criminels d'avoir accès aux données. Donc, on reste sans solution à ce stade par rapport aux problèmes que vous pointez d'accès aux données, de manque d'accès aux données, notamment pour protéger les victimes. Que ce soit à l'échelle des États membres ou à l'échelle de l'Union européenne, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une manière d'améliorer la protection des victimes et leur accompagnement, notamment sur le plan juridique, d'avoir un système européen, une porte d'entrée européenne? J'y pense parce que ça fait le lien avec ce que notre Parlement demande depuis des années, l'accompagnement des victimes d'espionnage. Et là aussi, il y a une préoccupation majeure, puisque ce sont des logiciels extrêmement intrusifs qui violent la loi de protection de la vie privée et des données. Et donc il y a clairement là, et j'aimerais avoir votre point de vue là-dessus, une vulnérabilité à combler, notamment d'un point de vue réglementaire. Et la dernière question est relative à une actualité brûlante de Shein et de la vente de poupées pédopornographiques en lien avec votre travail sur la cybercriminalité liée à la diffusion d'images pédopornographiques. Est-ce que Europol, d'une manière ou d'une autre, est associé, utilise les données qui sont disponibles dans ce cadre-là ou pas du tout? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And please, Mr. Schilleris.
Thank you very much. Regarding ransomware attacks and what we should be aware of, actually it's a layered approach, so it means that we as individuals, for sure, we should follow proper cyber hygiene, but then actually companies should address it as well. Because if you look to main crime committed, actually it's usually through supply chain. So it means that actually you install something what is probably not yours, but actually somehow linked to malicious activity or malicious piece of software, and then you are hacked. So recently, I believe that everyone remembers a few airports closed in the European Union because of ransomware attack. So it can happen, and probably it will happen. What we can do, we can mitigate probably damage and to develop proper resilience. I believe here NISA is doing perfect job. We are trying to share our intelligence, what we collect during our daily investigations, and learn from each case about which we are aware of. When it comes to this encryption and we need more encryption actually, and to be better protected. But as I said, it's not as it shouldn't be as wild west with everyone is doing whatever he or she thinks is necessary, but in proper manner in order to be safe. And what we see also from customer protection, many services are advertised as encrypted, as proof against hacking, and they are not, in fact. So it's just blind statement that actually you have this messenger which is end-to-end encrypted, and you are absolutely safe, and in fact you are not. And we can share it from our investigations. When it comes to child sexual abuse in China, I'm not aware of this case, but probably if it's a legitimate platform, we should be able to get something. Not everything, but something at least from this as an evidence. And I presume that law enforcement is doing it. And about information, about sensitive information, if I recall correctly. So it means that in different platforms are stored different information. And based on it, actually different protection measures applies. Here is same for time being. We don't have proper standardization. In many cases, all the standards are based on decision of the company to apply or not to apply, and we don't have proper mechanisms so far where we can, for example, ensure or enforce same standards for everything. Then actually it would be much more order here. And because all the markets are mainly treated as one, as global one, so in many cases all these services and standards are interconnected between continents, between different companies, between different supply chains as well.
Thank you. And on behalf of the left, I would like to invite Mr. Antocci to take the floor.
Grazie Presidente. Grazie a Europol per il rapporto sul crimine organizzato su Internet e un'analisi aggiornata, approfondita. Il tema sono i dati. Il tema dei dati è il tema dei temi in tanti argomenti. Ed è una moneta di scambio, ormai è una moneta di scambio, ed è interessante anche la parte legata di cui avete parlato sull'intelligenza artificiale, sulla vicenda di quella generativa, penso alle frodi per target, così come all'annoso problema dei canali criptati. Quello è un tema molto importante e rilevante che sta inficiando molte indagini anche di criminalità organizzata transnazionale in Italia sui temi della lotta al crimine organizzato mafioso. Serve quindi una risposta urgente a livello europeo. La mia domanda è legata prioritariamente al tema della conservazione dei metadati, cioè dei tempi di conservazione dei metadati, che ovviamente ostacolo, non ce lo possiamo nascondere, le indagini delle forze di polizia e che ovviamente necessita di una proporzionalità con i temi legati alla tutela della privacy o ai diritti dei cittadini. La mia domanda è, secondo lei, quanto tempo serve? Qual è il limite, diciamo, massimo e necessario per essere di aiuto alle forze di polizia? E poi, cosa sta facendo Europol per contrastare le frodi informatiche che, come risulta dalle relazioni, inoltre sono in grande crescita, come dicevo prima, utilizzando spesso l'intelligenza artificiale? Grazie.
Thank you, Mr. Antocci. And Mr. Schilleris, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for really good questions and questions which are really matters for everyone. Regarding metadata, it's true that it's a tool for law enforcement how to investigate crime in many cases, but having access to metadata, you can have leads, so it means that actually, but you don't have proofs. So here's the main difference, because in many cases, for example, if I can we can be linked to Sofia that I called her or she called me, but it doesn't show about what we conversation was. And in many cases, for example, we need to have content. And only in this case, court can be objective. So it's a good thing. And in each member state, it's a different time frame for keeping such kind of data. In some member states, we have 7 days. In some countries, we have 5 years. So probably true somewhere in the middle. I would say it's 7 days for sure. It's not enough in many cases. And we have many bad examples where we were not able to investigate. And sometimes we are facing a bit challenging situation when law enforcement is not allowed to keep this data, but there are no limitations for private entities to keep this data. And you can easily buy this data as a service from different tech companies. So it's a bit of a paradox, but it is what it is. Regarding online frauds and what Europol is doing in this matter, we have analytical working file, it's called Terminal, and within a cybercrime center, and we support member states, especially when we tackling big fraud platforms. And usually in traditional crime, 99% of crimes is committed in the same country. In cybercrime, is completely in opposite. Majority of cases, I would say clearly 99%, are committed from abroad. So in this case, actually, usually we don't have organizers and victims in the same country. Usually all these call centers, all these investment platforms are hosted somewhere abroad, and here international cooperation is key. And here Europol, we provide crucial services for law enforcement in connecting different jurisdictions, in connecting different law enforcement entities, and assisting them in collecting of evidences and digital evidences. So, for example, we can do image of server, we can, for example, examine data, we can provide our forensic examination reports, and we can even testify in front of the court. So we are doing it. Question, is it enough? I think that we can do much more and in much more efficient way.
Thank you. This concludes our first round of speakers, and we can continue with the second 1-minute round of questions and answers. And I have Madame Dupont on my list, so please, you're most welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to Europol for highlighting the very essence and the importance of the work, specifically when we look at how cybercrime is conducted across the board and across borders, which is mainly the most problematic thing, probably, and some of them. In connection to what you had already said, very much welcome your words also on the differences between the actors. So the, let's say, profit-organized and orientated actors, the non-state actors, state-affiliate actors. I think it's very important for us also to know politically on how to differentiate between that. But we, of course, see far too often a very mixed form of all of that. So would you recommend us to actually change something in terms of definition so that we can make Europol and your work better adapted to the situation we are in? You mentioned also the cooperation with private sector. So what would be your wish there? What could be helpful for the agency to fulfill the mandate? And last point, it was also mentioned by some of the colleagues, awareness campaigns. I mean, it's not necessarily the tool of Europol to do that, but what can we actually do more to also educate citizens about the threats, not only when it comes to their physical integrity, to their not falling into money laundering schemes and so on and so forth, but also in the geopolitical context we are in, because threats had become more imminent than before. Thanks.
Thank you. Madame Sorel, you wanted also to take floor? No? Yes, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Merci, bonjour. Merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. J'aimerais savoir, monsieur, vous avez abordé à un moment donné le profil des cybercriminels. Donc, j'aimerais savoir quelle est la proportion ou la part de ceux qui obtiennent des données en hackant des comptes et ceux qui peuvent bénéficier de complicité à l'intérieur d'institutions ou d'entreprises. Et donc, quelle est la part des deux? Que risquent ceux qui ont récupéré des données qui ont servi à des fraudes. C'est-à-dire que la législation est différente selon les pays. Est-ce qu'il y a des pays qui disposent d'une législation qui est plus pertinente, dont nous pourrions nous inspirer pour les autres pays européens? Et vous avez dit également, sans prise de conscience, on ne pourra pas endiguer le phénomène de cybercriminalité. Qu'est-ce que vous sous-entendez par cette prise de conscience? Est-ce que vous avez des exemples à nous donner? Et notre collègue a parlé de l'accompagnement de ceux qui sont espionnés. Encore faut-il savoir que l'on est espionné. Comment faire? J'avais posé la question lors d'une précédente rencontre et on ne m'a jamais répondu à cette question. Enfin, sur les rançons logiciels, aéroports, hôpitaux, etc., je trouve assez incroyable que les employés, parce qu'il y a eu une action humaine à un moment donné, il y ait eu cette défaillance, c'est-à-dire qu'à un moment donné, il faudrait qu'ils sachent quelles sont les mesures élémentaires de protection. Et dernier point, si vous permettez, ce qui m'a surpris, c'est que vous avez dit qu'il faut sécuriser côté fournisseur. La logique, ça serait de sécuriser des deux côtés, fournisseurs et utilisateur final. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Madam Sorrell. And Mr. Schilleris, you have now time for concluding remarks, but also on reflecting on the last questions. So please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So we'll start from definitions. Completely agree. Actually, it's a really good point because basic principle how law enforcement works, everything is prohibited for us what is not clearly allowed by law. And actually, principle for private parties is completely opposite. Everything is allowed what is not prohibited. So that's why sometimes we are bounded by different definitions. And in many cases, we don't have any flexibility, and especially in cybercrime, flexibility is widely needed. And so that's why in many cases we have finalized list of data what we can collect, but in many cases we try to predict future because we are not aware what kind of data will be generated in the future. So it's not so easy, and also that's why in many cases legislation is falling behind. When it comes to private sector, for me, I would say 9 from 10 operations which we supported are supported by private sector as well. Because without their active participation, it's almost impossible to do anything on our own only. So it's crucial, and in majority of cases, we have one-way traffic. It means that actually we want to consume data from private parties, but we don't want, and we are not allowed by law to share anything back. And in many cases, they are losing motivation because we are not allowed to say even what we did with their data, which they provided to us. So in these cases, I think that actually some kind of more flexible approach should be implemented. Awareness campaigns, and actually it's linked to last question as well. It's crucial because without awareness, without proper education, it will be repetition of same crime committed in the past and in the future. Because actually, if you still reuse same password, so same different group will access your account. So it means that actually we need to learn this lesson, and hopefully not in hard way, but in educational way. And then actually everyone will be much safer. When it comes to failures of hospitals, so for example, it means that in each case we see different modus operandi. For sure, supply chain should be secure, same as core infrastructure. But I wanted to illustrate with this supply chain that no matter that you fulfill your duties 100%, you still will not be 100% safe because you depend on supply chain. So that's why both parties should agree on measures. And maybe to conclude everything, actually, phenomena is growing, and I still remember when top 10 companies were oil and different services, right now all of them, they are digital. So it means that actually digital data, it became new oil. It means that actually they are much more valuable than physical thing. And unfortunately, not everyone is still able to understand it. And sometimes we don't value our data. And actually it's how big companies are generating huge revenues from it. And we as law enforcement, we are also limited in keeping this data. And I believe that we need to revise it. So, for example, for me as police officer, it's hard to understand why sometimes we are forced to delete criminal data which we collected, for example, criminal forum, which could be used or could be useful even after 10 years because it's criminal data. So I think that this balance of privacy should be assessed objectively, and we need to respond properly to current threats, because otherwise we lose confidence of people, we lose trust of people and victims, because we will not be able to assist and fulfill our duties properly. Thank you.
Mr. Gilles, thank you so much for your presentation and for your active engagement in today's discussion. Dear colleagues, I'd also like to thank everybody who contributed to today's discussion. This concludes our point of agenda, and we will continue in a couple of minutes after we redo the podium. Thank you. Dear colleagues, let's continue with our agenda. And the last point on our morning's agenda is the discussion on the criminal use of pyrotechnics. We have seen a worrying trend with an increased security threat in several member states following the use of pyrotechnics by criminals. The Commission, through DG GROW, has performed an evaluation on the Pyrotechnics Directive from 2013, and DG Home has recently finalised a feasibility study on reducing the security risks posed by the criminal misuse of pyrotechnics. During the exchange, we will have representatives from both DG GROW, DG Home to present their findings. We'll also have Europol online to present the ongoing work from the EU perspective, and we have the National Coordinator for Fireworks at the Netherlands National Police to give us an overview of how they are addressing these issues nationally. I will give 8 minutes to each of our speakers, and after that we will continue with the session of question and answers. So first I would like to invite Mr. Hans Ingels, Head of Unit for Bioeconomy, Chemicals and Cosmetics, DG GROW from the European Commission, to present the findings of the evaluation of the Pyrotechnics Directive. So, sir, please, you have the floor.
So, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members, thank you very much for hosting us. My colleague Martin and myself will give you a bit of an overview of the problems that we're facing with pyrotechnic articles. So from our side, we launched the evaluation of the Pyrotechnics Directive, which is a fairly old directive. It originally dates back from 2007. It was slightly revised in 2013. And my presentation will focus mainly on security aspects of the Pyrotechnics Directive. I hope that this functions. Yes, it functions. But slower than I thought. Okay, right. So we decided to do a formal evaluation of the Pyrotechnics Directive because we noticed that there are several problems on the market, and the problems that I will explain afterwards. So we made this evaluation based on 5 different criteria. It's effectiveness, efficiency, relevance, coherence, and EU added value. And that was back-to-back with the evaluation of the Civil Explosives Directive. The 2 directives have something in common because they both concern explosive articles. So in other words, they explode, but they've got a different purpose. Explosives for civil users are very often used for digging tunnels or for mining, while pyrotechnic articles are explosions that are produced pyrotechnic articles that produce heat or smoke or gas or another function. So we did this. This was a fairly long process. There was a supporting study, there was stakeholder consultation, a public consultation from 2023 onwards, and we published the evaluation just after the summer. It was a quite broad stakeholder involvement because there was a lot of interest in the evaluation. So the security in the Pyrotechnics Directive is one of the elements. The main element in the Pyrotechnics Directive, as it was conceived almost 20 years ago, was free movement of pyrotechnic articles, also with a view to protect human health, with a view to protect the environment, and a view to protect public security. So it was a bit of mixed objectives and a combination of factors in the directive that was ultimately transformed in the 2013 directive. So security at that time was less relevant for the legislator, for the European Parliament, for the Council and for the Commission. But the directive at the moment contains certain provisions with the security dimension. For instance, registration system for traceability, and also for certain types of pyrotechnic articles requires a specialist knowledge requirement for powerful pyrotechnic articles. Pyrotechnic articles are a broad category. So they include fireworks, and most of the presentation will be about fireworks, but they also concern other pyrotechnic articles, for instance, for theatrical use or other, like airbags in cars. They're also pyrotechnic articles. But here we'll focus specifically on fireworks. And this is also the area where the evaluation found that there were many problems. Good. So, the evaluation findings were fairly straightforward because they reflect the findings on the European market. The security situation, for instance, and we'll have other examples also from the Dutch police in a few minutes, is that the security situation in 2025 was fairly worrying as a consequence of the misuse of pyrotechnic articles. Because pyrotechnic articles are very often used in illicit activities, in organised crime, in illegal trade, in football stadia. There are also attacks with fireworks on security forces. There's robberies of cash machines, and there's also quite a illegal manufacturing of fireworks. There's no comprehensive EU-wide overview, unfortunately, of all the different accidents that are happening and the misuse, because obviously there's not so many detailed statistics on criminal activities, and there's certainly no statistics on the black market, because there's a lot of black market in different types of fireworks. So a few examples, just to illustrate the size of the problem. In the Netherlands, for instance, there were about 1,500 attempted attacks with pyrotechnics, in other words, with fireworks and explosives in 2024, which is an increase of 71% compared to the year before, and almost 700 attacks in the first half of 2025. So probably this year, Netherlands will exceed more the 1,500 attacks of last year. Another example is Germany, where at New Year's Eve, for instance, there were 5 deaths due to mishandling of professional fireworks, and many other people were injured and were brought to the hospital. In Berlin, for instance, 30 police officers and 1 firefighter was injured, and 36 flats were damaged. And there was also misuse of bullet bombs, so-called Kugelbombe, containing several kilograms of explosive content. So, the directive is far from perfect, and this is what the evaluation also concludes. Why? Because there's a broad availability of dangerous fireworks with excessive net explosive content. In other words, there's a lot of fireworks that are being sold in the EU that are clearly illegal, or that clearly may not be used by consumers or by criminals, of course, because there are certain categories of fireworks, F4, which are the real professional fireworks, which may only be used by people with specialized knowledge. There's a lot of abuse there, because a lot of these fireworks are being sold to consumers, are being used by criminals. At the moment, it's legally very difficult for member states to restrict the sales of these specialized fireworks, because there's a lot of e-commerce and there's a lot of illegal imports coming from third countries. And this is what we also see, because the rules as such allow some leverage to member states for certain categories of fireworks, for the ones that are less dangerous. But nonetheless, there's a circumvention of the rules, and there's a misuse by the unauthorized users. Often, a lot of these users, especially people who are trying to have a party or trying to do something with fireworks, don't have any knowledge about the fireworks that they're using. And very often these fireworks only explode after a while, so people have a tendency to look, oh, why doesn't it explode? Of course, they go closer to the fireworks and then it explodes in their face. And there's also a lot of circumvention across national borders, because member states try to regulate their own markets, so there's not real internal market, which means that people who really want to have professional fireworks either import them to e-commerce or try to buy them in another member state and transport them themselves by car, for instance, to their home country. And another problem that we're seeing is that there's simply not enough deterrence, not penalties. The system is not perfect because you see insufficient deterrence in the current system. So transfers of high-risk pyrotechnic articles across the EU can happen without any procedural requirements, although they're dangerous, although there's no rule, especially in the EU, that requires specific forms of specific authorizations for the transfers between EU member states on dangerous fireworks, and especially the heavy ones. And there's also insufficient traceability. This is also what the evaluation found, insufficient traceability of individual pyrotechnic articles in the supply chain. So you will find the evaluation It's a summary on the Commission's webpage, and you find a more elaborate staff working document that also explains the different findings and all the different statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ingels. And we will continue with a presentation by Mr. Schiffer, who's the head of Unit Counterterrorism, DG Home. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable members, we, on the DG Home side of the Commission, have been conducting a study over the past 9 months, specifically looking into the criminal misuse of pyrotechnics. And we did this in close cooperation with our colleagues from DG GROW in order to complement the evaluation of the current legal framework on pyrotechnics, the Pyrotechnics Directive, with a particular look on the criminal loopholes and the illicit activities that are surrounding the issue of pyrotechnics without being fully covered at this stage, looking at the existing legal framework by the Pyrotechnics Directive. And this has proven to be a very useful and fully complementary exercise, which is why you are seeing the two of us here today. So there was no duplication, there was complementary work, which has helped both sides in the better understanding of the interactions, interlinkages between what is legal, what is illegal, and if it's illegal, how does it get into the hands of the criminals. So instead of just looking at the cases that we have seen in the past, and there are unfortunately a number of them, we have been more looking, when it comes to the criminal abuse, to the whole supply chain and trying to identify how criminals, for their malicious purposes, coming or getting into possession of these pyrotechnics, and to identify also, to the extent possible, whether the pyrotechnics have been illegally manufactured from the start, so easy to get into their possession, or whether they have been diverted at some stage during the supply chain from the legal trade flow into illicit activities, and if so, at what point and by using what means. The key findings of the study, which is also available on our Europa website of the European Commission DG Home. The main findings is, in the first place, a very fragmented and uneven threat landscape in Europe. We have some member states that are particularly concerned. They face significant challenges, speaking here, for instance, of Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, including high rates of illegally manufactured and diverted pyrotechnic materials, while others face hardly any, if not no, threat in that regard and do not encounter this criminal phenomenon. The fragmentation results in different levels of prioritization of the security issue within the national security context by police, by law enforcement, by monitoring authorities, and also in a lack of a coherent legal framework for action against the illicit activities. Organized criminal groups, of course, are therefore increasingly using pyrotechnics, and also what we can confirm is increasingly using pyrotechnics over firearms for violent acts, property damage, intimidation, and exploiting cross-border vulnerabilities. And this goes also hand in hand with a more general phenomenon that we are seeing also in this field, but also across criminal activities, is the growing recruitment of minors for the commission of such acts, of young persons. Looking more specifically then at the supply chain and the different stages where we could see and noted diversion into illicit activities, the import of non-compliant pyrotechnics and the diversion for the legal chains are more important and happen more often than the actual illegal manufacturing of pyrotechnics inside the European Union. All three types of criminal abuse exist, but import of non-compliant, of not up to standard, at least in safety terms, but often also illicitly produced imports from outside Europe, and the diversion of legally produced into illicit activities, into the illicit market, are more important than the illegal manufacturing of pyrotechnics inside Europe. Online platforms and social media are key channels for illegal sales of pyrotechnics. Postal and courier services, including private operators, are widely used to move illegal pyrotechnics. Nicely wrapped from the outside, you cannot tell what's inside, and the high volume of parcels entering the EU, also from outside, and moving across member states makes systematic checks almost impossible. You can go for risk assessments, but none of the risk assessment, for instance, done by customs will cover more than 10%, which still leaves a 90% chance of getting through controls at the border. Then, because of the illicit manufacturing or diversion into illicit activities, law enforcement has also difficulties to trace and to monitor pyrotechnics, because at some stage the legal trade information chain from producer to wholesaler to outlet and possible further in between stages, the legal trade chain with a complete chain of information is broken. And this has also to do then with the different national laws, inconsistent labeling, and the anonymity of online purchases that feeds and adds and increases the problem and the challenges for law enforcement to trace and monitor. Last not least, in this specific field, there is also a lack of sufficient cooperation and information exchange between the authorities. It remains fragmented. Some member states, they have it, but more at their own, often regional initiative, because they are facing, notably in their common cross-border regions, growing or a higher rate of pyrotechnic-related criminal activities. But it's not systematically covered at the EU level. We do have, though, the impact measures. It's security-driven by member states, coordinated and strongly supported by Europol. And this European multidisciplinary platform against criminal threats has also taken pyrotechnics up together with firearms, but it's only a more operational activity in order to stem the tide and to find tools at the operational level. What they cannot remedy through these kind of operational activities are legal or the strategic loopholes that do exist. Terrorist attacks, to come also on this specific point, using pyrotechnics are a more isolated event. May have happened, but this is not the broad use of criminal use for pyrotechnics. But because of their easy availability, there is, of course, always the potential risk that they can also be abused at a given moment for terrorist attacks. This can absolutely not be ruled out. This also has to do with the waterbed effect. That's another important finding. The waterbed effect is simply describing, in law enforcement terms, in security terms, that if you tighten the rules on one means to commit criminal or terrorist activities, because the criminal intentions do not disappear, they moving and shift to other, then more easily available means. And this is what we are seeing here also between the explosive precursors and the tight and strict legal framework we have for explosive precursors compared to pyrotechnics. And therefore, summing up all of this, the study which will strongly feed and support colleagues then also in the impact assessment for the upcoming revision of the Pyrotechnics Directive, sees and confirms a clear need to reinforce the security dimension of pyrotechnics, a need for an alignment of the regulatory frameworks and enforcement practices across member states to close existing loopholes, to improve cross-border cooperation and the exchange of good practices systematically, ideally on the basis of a common platform or hub, and generally also a better public-private cooperation with a greater engagement of the Pyrotechnics Directive to help securing further the legal chain and the legal trade from being abused and diverted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will continue a discussion with a presentation by Mr. Robert Fay, who is the head of the EU Drugs Unit at the Europol, who will be joining us online. And I was also informed that most probably there is not going to be translation due to bad quality of connection, but we will see and try. So, Mr. Fay, please, you have the floor. You have the screen.
Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. My name is Robert Fay, and I hope you can hear me on the other side. Also, apologies, my voice got broken, so I hope it will be enough. It will survive in the next 5-8 minutes for my intervention. I will be very brief, introducing the topic of how Europol sees currently the threat of heavy pyrotechnics in the EU and what currently we are doing. Basically, in my intervention, I will refer only to the heavy pyrotechnics. We already heard from the previous speakers what heavy pyrotechnics mean. FG category, F4 category is basically what I'm going to reflect on and try to present the threat and what currently we are doing and the criminal networks behind. So basically, when we talk about the heavy pyrotechnics, we are always referring to F4 category, meaning the heavy pyrotechnics that pose really heavy threats for public safety. They are considered as mass explosive goods, and as such they are hazardous whenever they are being, we talk about the production, transport or storage of such goods. One category of these F4 heavy pyrotechnics is definitely flashbangers, something that is an explosive device, but basically that makes just a loud bang, shockwave, and the flash. So basically, power of the flashbangers is equal likely to the two hand grenades. So you can imagine it's a quite heavy stuff to be misused. Why these F4 pyrotechnics or heavy pyrotechnics became so attractive for criminal networks? Well, first of all, they are very cheap. They are super cheap to obtain. Obviously, the organized crime generates a lot of money, so for them, this, in the terms of investment and misuse for the criminal activities, is a peanuts. It's nothing. It costs almost nothing. They are quite easily to obtain from the legal market, whether they are diverted from the legal, whether they are illegally produced in the illegal factories. I will talk about the supply chains more in detail a bit later. And basically, there is a low punishment in the EU. Even they are caught red-handed. Basically, low punishments and punishments. If you are found with this, it's almost equal to nothing. So basically, cocktail of these three components: cheap, easy to obtain, and low punishment, makes quite attractive these goods for the criminal networks. We already heard from the previous speakers where criminal networks are misusing or abusing these heavy pyrotechnics. So obviously we are talking about the ATM attacks. So in the EU, almost in every ATM attack, you have the F4 pyrotechnics that is being misused. We are talking about the improvised explosive devices that criminals are using, and sometimes these improvised explosive devices are being used also by the terrorist organizations time to time. What what is as well quite largely misused is basically we see the heavy pyrotechnics used by the drug criminal networks, and primarily in the member states with major seaports. Obviously, I don't need to highlight which are the main seaports or main getaways of the goods to the EU, but we have seen many cases, multiple cases, primarily in the Netherlands, Belgium, more and more in Germany, of misuse of the heavy pyrotechnics by the drug criminal networks. We also see, and I think somebody mentioned already, that police is also facing the attacks by the demonstrations or during the football matches by the hooligans. Such goods are being basically used against the police. Briefly, when I talk about the criminal networks, and we talk about the really criminal networks, not the drugs or the ones that are misusing it, that are basically purchasing, but the ones that are involved in the production or the transport or the supply chains, we see several characteristics that we can detect, and those strategical picture that I will try to present is based on the operations that we are currently supporting or that we have supported in the past. So basically, we are talking about the criminal networks that are fluid. However, the specialized criminal networks or criminal organizations that are involved in the production and supply of the heavy pyrotechnics are hierarchically structured. So you have a leader, and then you have different levels or layers of the criminal organizations, up to from the top up to the lower level, and the people that are involved in the basically providing the logistic and facilitating supply. Basically, they are frequently users of the encrypted platforms, anything that protects and safeguards their communication in order to facilitate their trafficking or the production they are using. In the past, we have seen the EncroChat and the SkyCC platforms, big time misuse of the pyrotechnics, but nowadays many other type of, whether professional or publicly available encrypted communication systems are being used. They generate high profits. Obviously, high profits is being generated through this crime activity, whether the money stays in EU and is being laundered, whether it goes out of the EU, it depends on how the criminal network is interconnected and what is the supply, what is the source of the heavy pyrotechnics. And basically, they have well-developed logistics in the EU, out of the EU, to maintain the supply chain active and ongoing. So basically, when we talk about the supply chains, and based on the investigations that currently we are engaging with the member states and some third parties, we can conclude the following. Basically, when we talk about F4 heavy pyrotechnics, so obviously the production, legal production, is monitored, is controlled. It has to happen with the authorization of the authorities. No question about that. However, there is a bit of diverse situation in the member states, and obviously the criminal networks are abusing these loopholes or the opportunities what they find. I can single out three key supply chain or three key streams that we have detected, and predominantly heavy pyrotechnics are being supplied in those three main pillars or streams, how we see it. First of all, basically heavy pyrotechnics by the criminals are being purchased from the legal wholesale factories, so something that is legal. However, they are forging, they are using the forged documents. They are setting up straw or front companies, and basically they are pretending that they are legal buyers for a legal use, but basically they are diversing the heavy pyrotechnics for a criminal use. Second pillar is related to the production in the illegal factories, whether in the EU or predominantly out of the EU. Something that used to be a legal factory that probably stopped the production, it's likely being exploited or used by the criminal networks that are basically just keep going with the production, black production, and obviously whatever it's illegally produced has only one sole purpose, which is the criminal activity or a misuse for the criminal purpose in the EU. And the third pillar that we are seeing as well through the cases that we are involved is something that is quite concerned, and it's we believe there is a quite not harmonized legislation in this area. So it's basically misclassification of ADR transportation and the classification of the transportation. So we have noticed that criminals are quite skilled whenever they are obtaining and purchasing these heavy pyrotechnics out of the EU. There is always the fake documents, fake transportation classification, and the transport as well that is involved with being involved. So usually these heavy pyrotechnics are producers are based out of the EU. You need the transport to move the things out of the EU into the EU, and there are obviously the either corruption elements, fraud documents, and mislabeling of the ADR transportation classification. So basically, this is the strategical picture what we are seeing. I cannot talk currently about the ongoing cases, but we are following up with the several member states that are most affected in this area, and we are reaching out and assisting them concerning the third parties that are as well either producers or they have activity of criminal networks that are involved in such a supply towards the EU and misuse of the heavy pyrotechnics in the EU. A bit of on the law enforcement view on the recommendations. We already heard from the previous speaker from the terrorist unit in DG Home a few registrations. I can just reiterate that this is spot on and nothing to add. On the law enforcement side, I need to highlight only two things. So basically, F4 heavy pyrotechnics, flashbangers, basically they don't have any or almost none legal use. So there is, in our opinion, there is no obstacles. Why not to completely forbid them? Why not to completely ban them? Because if there is no legal use for it, why they should be keep being produced in the EU or out of the EU? So also there is a need for the harmonization of law enforcement legislation. What is the difference? In some countries, some member states, possession or the misuse of the, basically not possession, misuse of the heavy pyrotechnics is considered as a crime, especially if if it has been proven that is being used by the drug criminal network, for example, for the attack of another criminal network, it is a crime. While in the other member states, it's just administrative offense. So basically, if some member states has this not as a crime and it's administrative offense, basically there is no possibility to open an investigation. There is no possibility for proactive law enforcement cooperation. There is no possibility for exchange of the data. So there is a bit of
Mr. Fay, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but could you please come to conclusion? You have already misused your speaking time.
Yes, I'm in the conclusion. So this was the conclusion. Yeah, thank you.
I apologize, I didn't want to interrupt you that way, but your voice survived well and you deserve a hot tea with honey or whatever.
Thanks a lot.
And thank you for your presentation. And now we will continue with the presentation from the field. I would like to welcome Chief Superintendent Ko Minderhout, National Coordinator for Fireworks at the National Police of the Netherlands. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, let me just take the time to give the view from the Netherlands police on the misuse of pyrotechnics in our country and our recommendations for the way we should approach this issue from a European point of view. Do I point it? Yeah, there it goes. We approach this issue from our perspective as an European issue. It's not just solely a national problem in the Netherlands. It's a European problem. Yes, there we go. In the Netherlands at this moment we have well, more than 1,000 attacks. It was already mentioned by earlier speakers involving fireworks, and well, the pictures speak for itself, but I would like to show them here because this is the reality of what those explosives really create. It's disastrous in neighborhoods. It has a huge impact on people, and I'd like to emphasize also that a lot of mistake attacks also happen. So imagine this is your house and you have nothing to do with any form of criminality, then you can imagine that how disastrous these attacks are. And this happens now more than 1,000 times a year. This year, it was already mentioned, we are already approaching a number of 700. The costs are enormous for the individuals, but it also goes further than that with injuries and deaths. I'm clicking forward, yes. So that was the criminal use of the pyrotechnics, but there's also the issue of the New Year celebrations. Last year, it wasn't actually much worse than the years before, but still, we see two deaths, two civilians who died. One of them, a 14-year-old boy in the city of Rotterdam. 224 police officers who were attacked, also injured, and 44 ambulance and firefighters attacked. Well, I don't need to sum it up all for you. It shows how immense the damage can be just for one celebration. And the violence against aid workers, against police officers, and against first responders is growing and growing and growing. It's not getting any less, it's not improving. Oh, thanks. As I said, we see this as a European problem because the number of explosions is not just growing in our country, it's also growing in other European countries. This goes hand in hand with the increase of the illegal distribution of the F4 fireworks, which is the professional fireworks. But don't be mistaken, I'd like to emphasize for us in the Netherlands, but also in, for example, Germany, Sweden and France, and also Belgium at this moment, the consumer fireworks is also a very highly used method of attacking first responders and civilians and police officers. It's not just the professional fireworks which create a problem at this moment, it's actually all of the fireworks, let alone that a lot of the testing on consumer fireworks recently shows that also consumer fireworks which has passed the test still is very unsafe. But also the online trade, and it was mentioned before, and the concern about this is growing and growing. The online trade in combination with the easy way of pursuing fireworks through postal packages and postal services is creating a higher risk. And then we have the big worry on our side, and I can imagine that this is growing in other countries as well, about the transportation over road and rail. Because of the heavy explosive which are being put in, for example, Cobra fireworks, which is F4 flashbanger fireworks, imagine that exploding in a container in a tunnel or something like that. It would be disastrous, of course. Well, what we did is for the total chain of producing fireworks until the moment that it's being misused in a criminal sense, we created what we call a crime script, which describes all the different stages in from production to misuse. And there we see that the so-called crime as a service is growing and growing. And maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but just to state it very clearly, this is a threat to everybody in European countries, especially to minors. And that's one of my, well, it's not personal, but it's one of the big worries we have. A couple of weeks ago, we made the first arrest of an 11-year-old boy trying to attach a heavy firework component to a door somewhere. 11 years old, in my opinion, is very young to be busy with those kind of things. So crime as a service is very easily said. You pay about 50, 100 euros to a minor and ask him or her to attach explosives to somebody's company or house. And they perform it and they film it. And then you have proof that you have intimidated your opponent. And you can also exploit the services of the minor. Of course, there's the issue of the ATM explosions, which has been said multiple times already, the transports, which I mentioned, and storage. And of course, the potential use for terrorist and hybrid conflict purposes, which now is becoming an actual problem again, in my opinion. Then we go to the next slide. Yes. So in the Netherlands, we did, in my opinion, already a lot, and I think we have to increase and step up a little bit. But we have a national task force now, installed by our Minister of Justice, led by the mayor of Rotterdam, Carola Schouten. We also have a national police program, of course, which is being led by me, increasing penalties. Our prosecutor offices have agreed on increasing the penalties, which actually hooks very nicely to the story of Mr. Fay from Europol, saying that the penalties are low. We agree, but they are thankfully increasing in our country. And we have a total ban now on consumer fireworks, which will start next year. We also truly believe in public-private collaboration. I think it's one of the very important pillars on which we can build an effective way of combating this issue. Working together with the production sites, but also working together with, for example, insurance companies, local authorities, schools, those kind of entities we can work together with in approaching this issue and really make steps. And of course, the focus on European cooperation, and that will bring me to the conclusion of my presentation, also with the eye on the clock. First of all, the basics are in place, but we can expand this. We have an annual conference next year for the third time, which mostly is very effective in starting up operational task forces and investigation. Also, we will join MPACT in creating education for prosecutors and police officers. I'm going to the next slide, but I'm afraid my yes. And then we can harmonize, of course, the regulations. It has been said a couple of times here. Simplify also the process of exchange of information. And just to make this a little bit clearer, not just police information or justice information, but also police to private sector, police to local authorities in other countries, which I think is very much necessary because individuals can start companies in other countries in Europe for criminal purposes. Okay, I think I will come to the conclusion. Thank you very much. This is my presentation so far. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chief Superintendent, and that concludes our round of speakers, and we will continue with discussion, questions and answers. I will give floor to representatives of political groups for 2 minutes, which will be followed immediately by the answers from the panelists, from the speakers, and please identify whom you would like to answer your question. So I start with EPP. Mr. Lenaers, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all the panelists, I think, for very, very interesting contributions today. And it really has once more underlined, I think, also the size and the magnitude of the problem we are facing. And I think the evaluation of the directive was very timely, especially since, as the Commissioner have explained, in the beginning it was really about sort of market access, internal market and safety, and the whole security aspect was missing. And I think also, given the testimonies given by, for instance, Dutch police today, it is absolutely high time, or even already beyond high time, to address these security issues when it comes to pyrotechnics. Now, I will not repeat anything that's already said, because the analysis is there, the assessment is clear. It's shocking, the increase in incidents we see in countries like the Netherlands. It's shocking to see how young the people are involved in these crimes now. The example of the 11-year-old boy is shocking, but if I understand correctly, 50% of the perpetrators are under 20 at the moment in the Netherlands. It's a huge issue. And what I hear is we lack an effective legal framework. Member states cannot restrict F4 fireworks. We have insufficient deterrence through lack of enforcement. We have insufficient information sharing, etc. So the assessment is clear now. I think the next step is what we're going to do about this. You mentioned about the revision of the directive. Could you tell me a little bit more about when we expect to have this proposal on the table and what you expect to put in there? I think Mr. Fay from Europol was very clear on the fact that F4 fireworks, flashbangers, have no legal use in the EU. Mr. Minderhout also said we need to harmonise F4 or legal framework on flashbangers and shells. Can we move to a point also in the Commission proposal that we have a coherent ban in the EU on these kind of fireworks which have no legal professional use but which are widely abused in criminal networks? Can we have something on the mail order system? It's something that is identified in the evaluation as well. It's a huge loophole in the sale of certain types of fireworks. Can we address this at the European level? But mainly this ban on flashbangers, on F4 fireworks, where also in the evaluation it's very clearly said, and I'll conclude here, Madam Chair, that the directive allows for the production of pyrotechnic articles with a net explosive content that exceeds even professional users' needs. I don't see any reason to keep this in place like that, but I would like the confirmation from the Commission that we can also address this together. Thank you.
Thank you. And it was clearly addressed to the Commission. So, gentlemen, which of you would like to start? Mr. Ingels, please.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Member, for your very good question. We're actually now seeking political validation for a revision of the directive. So, because this is a decision to be taken by the Commissioners whether or not to go ahead with the revision of the directive. If we were to go ahead, it's clear that we will go with a public consultation and an impact assessment. So it's not obvious to say at this point which options that we will take. But the points that you raised are certainly the points that we need to address. First of all, we need to avoid any abusive use by consumers to public health. This is certainly something that we have to do. In my personal opinion, we have to work very much on wholesalers because there's a risk of diversion there, and there's a problem that a lot of F4 fireworks, but also F2, F3 are being sold to people who should not be using them. And there should also be a range of prohibitions in the new set, in the new regulations. Or there are different options. You could work on a targeted revision of the directive. You could also go for a more global revision where you could merge, for instance, civil explosives, which has a more stringent regime and which seems to be working well, with pyrotechnics. But we need to also be very precise here because our main problem is about fireworks. And there are other types of pyrotechnic articles, like theoretical pyrotechnics, and also the pyrotechnics for other uses, for instance, like airbags. There we need to ensure that we've got a system that also sufficiently takes into account that we should not be prohibiting airbags from the single market. So the purpose of the revision, when it will take place and when it's politically validated, would precisely be to address the problems in the evaluation and to make the rules much more stringent than they are now.
Mr. Schöffel, would you like to add?
Yeah, complementing, because colleagues here, Hans and his team are leading on this within the Commission, but what we are doing in DG Home, still Commission, is we have put into the internal security strategy, in the new one adopted on the 1st of April, Protect EU. We have put already, and we gave us a political mandate to look also into the harmonization of the criminal sanctions on this field. And we can do this based on Article 83 of the Treaty on the Functioning. So all of this is now under consideration, and I think it will have to come because it has been highlighted and flagged by first-line police on the ground, encountering the problems, also when it comes to investigations, prosecutions. And there is currently no such harmonized legal framework, and this would help enormously in getting a better grip on the problem. And this would then also involve, as ancillary provisions, imposing information exchange, creating platforms for the exchange and coordination, and the collection of statistical data, which is also an issue where we do have a number of blind spots. So this is certainly something that has to be, and it will come as well. As to the sequence, last remark, as to the sequence, I think it's first important to update and revise the Pyrotechnics Directive in order to know what are the obligations and what is the framework for which you will be punished if you are breaching it, and then you come with a legal framework on the criminal sanctions. So there is a certain sequence, but it doesn't prevent us from starting and launching the preparatory works already now, because we all know with all the better regulation requirements, etc., having a new legal framework and initiative on the table requires 2 years minimum preparatory work. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the S&D Group, I'd like to give floor to Mr. Relton. Thijs, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm undermining my first point immediately because I'm now the second speaker from the European Parliament from the Netherlands. But as the superintendent from the Netherlands said, this is a European problem. And I think it's important to underline that, okay, we are here with a couple of Dutch colleagues, but this is happening in cities throughout Europe, in Sweden, in Germany, even in Romania. And I think that we need to understand the urgency, because certain member states have been trying to put this on the agenda for years. And now I'm glad that we have the evaluation and we can move on. But families, entire streets are being literally terrorized because your block or your street could be the next one in a city like Amsterdam, where this is happening daily. So we must act and we must stop this. And my question to Mr. Schiefer is, yes, I understand a full revision takes time, but also in the line of reasoning of Mr. Leenaars, can you maybe clarify a little bit where we have the space for emergency measures, because we have an emergency situation. So we need measures that, we can call them the low-hanging fruit or whatever, but we need some measures that give relief immediately also to our law enforcement and police. And to the Dutch police official, I would like to ask what concrete tools could help you from the European level, from European legislation, to bring down to the national and local level that could really help you address the problem more effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with Mr. Schiefer, please. You have the floor.
The question is well understood. The immediate action can only lie in the practical operational police work, because the legal framework and revising it takes what it takes. Even if we speed up things to the maximum, even if we get a derogation from impact assessments, etc., etc., you still need to deliberate. You have to discuss and negotiate with the council. So, and then it has to be transposed if it's a directive. So we all know it. Operational police cooperation is the solution. I mentioned MPACT, for instance, the member state-driven joint operational activities, prioritizing burning security threats, crime threats, and pyrotechnics has been, together with firearms, been identified. It's one of the key actions under MPACT. Colleagues from Europol can say more about this, and this is where I see the solution. And then via Europol, you can also improve immediately. And of course, with an extra voluntary effort, there is no binding framework at this stage, but with a voluntary effort, immediately improve the information exchange and also joint investigation teams, operational task force. I mean, there is a whole toolbox available at Europol to coordinate and provide support to member states at the operational level, pending reinforcing the legal framework.
Thank you. And Chief Superintendent, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for your specific question, because I think it really touches on the core of course, the appeal we are also doing here. When you ask about concrete steps or measures which could help the law enforcement and the police in a country like the Netherlands, but I think also in other European countries, I think there are a couple of things. First of all, there is the issue of the prioritizing. It's in our country, of course, obviously I showed the pictures, it's a high prioritized issue at this moment. But to really combat the illegal trafficking of heavy fireworks, we need to work together with Germany, Belgium, France, for example. And as long as the issue isn't highly prioritized in those countries as well, it's really hard to get an operational investigation started. So what we would like, what really would help us also from here, from the European Commission and Union, is that if we really prioritize at the same level, then I think we can make steps. That's one thing which we can now say is that with Europol together, we are actually making steps in joint investigation teams, but still it's difficult to get this started. Other thing is that the regulation of the legal trade in heavy fireworks isn't harmonized through the whole of Europe. We have a pyro pass, which has been introduced in the Benelux countries. A lot of work has been put into this by our Ministry of Transportation and Environment, which actually regulates the market of heavy fireworks. If you want to buy it, then you have to show the pass. If you want to sell it as well. But if we don't have it in the whole of Europe, then the legal fluency of heavy fireworks can still go on. And lastly, for us, there is no. We as a police in our country have authority on the moment when it's being criminally used, but we have no authority on transportation. We have no authority on the trade or the legal trade. And in every country in Europe, this is differently organized, which is completely understandable, but it makes cooperation quite difficult, actually. And it would be a great step if we can improve our cooperation on this side as well. I think that also will improve the exchange of information, which I already mentioned, between police, justice, and public organizations. So hopefully I have answered your question a little bit.
Thank you. I do not see anybody wanting to take floor on behalf of PFE and DCR. So we will continue with Renew. And Ms. Garcia Hermida van der Walle, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the speakers for joining us today. It's also very nice to see that on this subject we're very much in line between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats and the Liberals and possibly other groups. I think that this shows that the interest is broad and it affects not only one or two or three countries, but it's a European problem, as the colleagues have said already. I think that today has been a real reality check. I think that we have seen in images as well how explosives with the explosive power of a hand grenade are taking over our streets, how police and firefighters and paramedics are facing violence. It's being used by criminals to commit attacks, and obviously this is because our current rules are no longer fit for purpose. And I think that it's important that we keep repeating this because the urgency has already been pointed out by the colleagues before me and pointed out also by Mr. Minderhout from the police. I understand that there is the need for due process in the legislative procedure within the European Union, but I would also like to echo the call from my colleagues Lenners and Ruijten for speeding up things wherever possible. So I think that my main question to the Commission would be, when can you say that there is political mandate or the way you call it, political validation to start in any case with the assessment? I would really like a time frame. I think that would help all of us. I think that for member states which might not be confronted with this problem at the moment, it's important to understand this, and we have heard today, as an early warning. This is going to be your problem also, not only in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Germany, in Sweden, in France, but everywhere if we don't act together. And that brings me also to my question to the Dutch police, which is when you catch heavy fireworks, how often are you able to trace it back to suppliers from other member states? And how can you, at this moment, are you able to cooperate with other member states? And what does that say about the lack or the presence of national action in different frameworks? And my question to Europol would be how to avoid that someone who has been caught with large amounts of illegal fireworks in the Netherlands, for example, just can move across the border and open and store in, say, Germany. And maybe this is also for the National Police of the Netherlands, if you have ideas about this. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. And let's start with the Commission. Mr. Ingels, please.
Thank you very much for a very good question. The day following the day of the publication of the evaluation, we've been seeking the political validation for a revision of the directive. We have not yet received political validation because there's still discussion between the commissioners, but we hope to get that political validation very soon. It can also be that the commissioners decide not to validate this initiative, but it's clear that we hope that this will happen very soon. On the very day that we'll get political validation, we'll launch the impact assessment process. We're now working on separate options, on the elaboration of options, and then we'll go to a public consultation, because we need to get it right. We need to get it right that we indeed ensure traceability of fireworks, and that we ensure that everybody that is entitled to use fireworks, because this is also a topic on which we should be working, that all the people who are entitled to use fireworks get the necessary training, have the necessary background, so that there's a closed loop to avoid diversion of fireworks. And also, we need to look at the imports coming from third countries. We need to get a good system whereby there's solid controls at the external borders for fireworks that are imported in the EU, because there we've got a major loophole. So the timing would be, as soon as we get political validation, we launch the entire impact assessment process. We start with a public consultation, and then we should then be tabling a legislative proposal addressing these problems.
Thank you. And please, Chief Superintendent.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much also for the questions. Considering the topic of investigating confiscated or criminal used heavy fireworks, and our options to do investigations back to the origin, I think in 70–80% of the cases we are able to do investigations which lead to the production of the used fireworks. The issue here is that we mostly end up in legal production. So what you see is a legal production site producing F4 fireworks or other forms of heavy shells or cobras or whatever. They are eventually being used in criminal activities. We do forensic investigations, for example, and can easily trace it back, especially when the packaging is not damaged. But then you end up in a legal production site and it's not unwilling, and I totally understand. But then, for example, we come to a production site in Spain or in Czech Republic, and there the answer is yes, we're very sorry, but this is just a legal production, so there's no criminal intention involved. What we see now in an increasing number when we do our investigations, and we hear the same in Belgium, is that there is a growing use of misclassification of packages, so we can trace it back a little bit in the production and the transportation, but then it ends up very quickly. I think this is a growing concern, and this brings me actually to our wish, also to answer your question. When these heavy fireworks are being used for criminal purposes, it would be great that we, I think all of us in European countries, police or other authorities, are being informed about the exportation of large amounts of heavy F4 fireworks. If, for example, because there's a lot of overproduction, I'd like to state that clearly, because when you see the amount of, for example, cobras and shells which are being produced, and you see the amount of the need for it, then there's overproduction. So if, for example, 2 containers with heavy fireworks are coming to the Netherlands, it would be great if we can get information on forehand so we can prepare ourselves. And that brings me to your second question about the people starting, for example, stores or anything like that in other countries. Yeah, that's one of the obstacles. I hope I addressed it also in my presentation just now. Is that's really a topic about the exchange of information between justice, police, and the public sector, and also local authorities in other countries, and it's a difficult obstacle. We really need, I think, help also from here in that matter. We have like organizations like the European RIC, which can cooperate in the border regions, but it's very difficult to get information, and also on forehand. If, for example, a Dutch criminal, to put it directly, starts a store in Germany, we would like to inform somebody over there, but it's difficult to find our way because we don't know who, and also it's not legislative to inform and to exchange the information. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. And I hope that Mr. Fay is with us. If you would like to, yes, if you would like to answer the question, please, you have this.
Yeah, I can just, thanks a lot, Madam Chair. I can just reiterate what Mr. Meinhold, Superintendent, just said. Definitely, there is a lack in the field of the proactive police cooperation, intelligence sharing, and engagement. On the drug field, because my unit is also covering drug, but also weapons and explosives, is completely opposite. So there is a very proactive and agile intelligence sharing, whether we talk about cocaine, synthetics, or whatever. We lack this type of engagement of the police units or police expert units in the countries, and sometimes what we have heard, police forces don't even know who is the counterpart in the other member state, which is nowadays almost impossible. That there is no good network. And why is this? Because in some of the member states, is not prioritized as a priority, is not considered as a threat. There is no maybe even crime. There is no legislative framework where they can start investigation upon. So sharing intelligence, proactive police investigations against the criminal networks that are really on top of the supply, production and transportation, and as well as the harmonization of this legislation across the member states. I think this is the first start, and it's already quite a lot of work to do. If this is done, then the criminal investigations will be in more proactive mode, in our opinion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And we will continue with the Greens, and Ms. Brickman, please, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup pour vos présentations extrêmement intéressantes pour nous. Je pense qu'il y a une large majorité qui se dégage du côté démocratique de ce Parlement pour dire il faut y aller, il y a urgence, il faut un ban. Je pense qu'on peut se mettre d'accord là-dessus aussi sur l'usage privé de feux d'artifice. Même s'il y a une certaine culture de la fête, y compris dans mon propre pays, en Belgique, pour utiliser des feux d'artifice, je pense que les images parlent d'elles-mêmes. Le fait que ça mène à des morts, à des personnes estropiées, à des incendies et des destructions, sans parler des réseaux criminels derrière, je pense que c'est un sujet qu'on doit mettre sur la table. Et il ne l'est pas suffisamment. Donc merci aux autorités néerlandaises et à la police néerlandaise d'avoir pris les devants. Je pense que c'est un exemple pour les autres États membres qui sont concernés. Demande à la Commission, à Europol, est-ce que, en suivi de cette réunion aujourd'hui qui montre bien que la mise en relation est extrêmement importante, vous pouvez faire la même chose en mettant autour de la table les autorités belges, allemandes et des pays les principaux concernés, parce que je pense qu'il y a effectivement une urgence de sécurité publique ici qui est, enfin voilà, que vous venez de nous démontrer. La deuxième chose, c'est que c'est un message politique, et donc ce sera un message, je pense qu'on peut envoyer ensemble vers les commissaires, que la validation politique doit venir vite, parce que la DGO m'a déjà montré sa capacité à venir avec des nouvelles législations ou la révision de réglementations existantes très vite, en moins de 2 ans. Donc quand la volonté politique y est, je pense qu'il y a moyen d'aller plus vite que le cadre prévu, et que ici, à nouveau pour une question de sécurité publique, je crois qu'on ne doit pas tergiverser beaucoup plus longtemps. J'ai une question par rapport aux affaires pénales. Est-ce qu'il y a, à votre connaissance, des affaires pénales qui sont jugées par les tribunaux et impliquent une utilisation illégale des produits pyrotechniques, et quelles ont été les issues judiciaires de ces affaires, si vous en avez connaissance. Et ma dernière question vers monsieur de la police néerlandaise. Vous avez dit que c'est compliqué de rentrer en contact avec vos homologues des autres pays. Avez-vous des contacts spécifiques, par exemple, avec vos homologues belges? Et si pas, voilà, est-ce que vous pourriez bénéficier d'un réseau comme Impact, par exemple, pour le faire? Ou est-ce que Europol peut être un facilitateur de votre point de vue? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And again, let's start with the Commission on the follow-up measures. Mr. Ingels? Yes. Mr. Schiffer? Who would like to start? Mr. Ingels, please.
So thank you very much for your question, Honourable Member. Indeed, we've got an expert group on pyrotechnic articles. So as soon as we get the political validation to revise the directive, we will organise a specific meeting of the expert group also to help us in identifying the right options and identifying the impact. Ideally, we will also encourage all the different member states to invite the enforcement authorities to also attend these meetings, because usually we've got all the national authorities responsible for pyrotechnic articles. We also have the associations of producers. So that will be for us the network that we will use to elaborate as soon as possible the options for the revision. And that hopefully should not take too long. Martin?
On the follow-up from our side, there is something I would like to come back to, the waterbed effect. So what we are doing, we are currently, and we will soon present an evaluation of a complementary legal framework on explosive precursors. There's a regulation, and it's in place for already quite some time. It also makes subject to reporting restrictions or to certain concentration ceilings of explosives precursors, and there is some overlap also with pyrotechnics. So we are following closely, because this is a file on which we are in the lead, a regulation and instrument to close the gaps there in order to avoid that the criminal use is just shifting from one instrument to the other, wherever we just happen to tighten the provisions, the belts, and this to avoid this. So we are proceeding in parallel, and ideally, but still to be decided, this could then result even in a joint proposal also for revision of the precursor regulation, which we have also scheduled for next year. So this is important to be borne in mind because these are two complementary legal frameworks between DG Home and DG Grow. On the penal sanctions, we have, of course, at the technical level, if I may call it this way, already relatively clear ideas on how to draft it. It's not the first criminal law instruments we would draft, but it is clear, but it is imperative to be very, very clear for reasons of legal certainty in the criminal law field, that we have a detailed and accurate understanding what we want to criminalize, what exactly. So the standard phrase we find in internal market legislation, sanctions have to be effective, proportionate, dissuasive, this is not enough. This leads us nowhere in concrete terms. So if you want to go for a specific criminal law instruments, we first need to have a clear understanding, ideally based on a strong reinforcement of the pyrotechnics directive of what are the rules in breach of which you are then being criminalized, and we come forward, and this can be indeed be relatively quickly with a accompanying criminal law instrument. And I mentioned already the Protect EU internal security strategy from April this year for the next 4 or 5 years, where we precisely hinted to this complementary measure in order to tackle the issue from all important angles, and criminal law is an important angle, notably because there is no such harmonized European criminal law framework right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Superintendent, your comment on cooperation with Belgium?
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks very much for your question. Well, we are very positive and also very happy with the Benelux meetings, which are taking place already for some period, specifically on fireworks trading. The difficulty in the Benelux setting is that we, of course, as a national police, are participating over there together with our Ministry of Transportation, together with our Ministry of Justice. But for other countries, like, for example, Belgium, there is also, I repeat myself a little bit, but the question of the prioritizing. And when it's not prioritized, for example, at the federal level, then it's a quest to find the right contacts. I must say that things are improving, which of course is positive in our cooperation, but which is not so positive for the Belgians, because it means that the explosions are also increasing in that country and the prioritizing is growing. But so far we are very happy with the Benelux meetings, but it's constantly searching for the right context, and I think that's also one of the things I would like to address here, that the fireworks, the chain of fireworks is mostly a legal chain, so it's not a police matter, it's actually inspector's matter, or like a transportation and consumer controlling matter. But now it's becoming a criminal issue. So we really, as a police in, for example, our country or other countries, we need to cooperate with other institutions in other countries. And I think that's where the difficulties start, also with Belgium, between Belgium and the Netherlands. Europol, that was your second question, can play, in my opinion, and they already do that, but we can really increase this, can play a large role in starting joint investigation teams and task forces. You cannot do criminal investigations without intelligence, without the real good data. And I think Europol is really the key player in this. So we see some good results now, but we really would like to improve on this together with Europol in collecting data, collecting intelligence, and starting joint investigation and task forces.
Thank you. And on behalf of the left, I would like to invite Mr. Antocci.
Grazie Presidente, grazie a Europol, alla Commissione e al Commissario Capo. Beh, diciamo che è chiaro che la direttiva ha una difficoltà, delle criticità. Vorrei segnalare intanto alcuni utilizzi dei gruppi criminali dei fuochi d'artificio. Segnali quali per esempio l'arrivo di carichi oppure il ritiro da parte dei pusher, ne abbiamo parlato prima parlando del tema della droga, delle sostanze stupefacenti o attività contro le forze dell'ordine, ma ci sono anche dei segnali intimidatori diretti e indiretti. Un caso posso portare italiano, per esempio a Napoli la camorra gambizza un uomo, subito dopo fa dei fuochi d'artificio con un segnale chiaro di forza ma anche di intimidazione per gli altri. Questa vicenda tra l'altro l'ha raccontata una bravissima giornalista, Luciana Esposito, napoletana, finita tra l'altro recentemente sotto scorta, ancora un'altra giornalista che rischia la vita nel nostro paese per raccontare le nefandezze della mafia. Allora il tema è molto serio e servono strumenti enormi e stringenti anche, e questo è importante, sulle attività di acquisto e di vendita, per esempio sull'online. E allora una domanda alla Commissione, se prevede una rivisitazione della normativa, cosa si può fare proprio per esempio sulle vendite online, sulla difficoltà di tracciabilità di questi argomenti. E invece per quanto riguarda il commissario Capo, volevo maggiore chiarezza per capire qual è il collo di bottiglia. È il territorio, sono le frontiere, sono la frammentazione delle norme. Cioè, Quale sarebbe il primo intervento che lei auspica da parte della Commissione per cercare di calmierare questo grosso problema che non c'è ovviamente solo nei Paesi bassi, ma che troviamo un po' ovunque e dove a volte molti perdono la vita? Grazie.
Thank you. And again, we start with Commission. Mr. Ingels, please.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Indeed, online sales are a major problem. But I think that we can address this by, first of all, putting more pressure on online platforms, giving them more responsibilities for the sales of pyrotechnic articles. And secondly, ensuring more traceability, because my personal opinion, traceability will be key here. As soon as we find good measures to ensure or to avoid the diversion of legal trade into criminal hands, as soon as we find a good traceability system that takes into account and that can clearly follow a pyrotechnic article that goes from manufacturer to importer to distributor, who are all authorized and all controlled, then there will be much less diversion of sales. And then also, as soon as platforms are becoming more responsible for our trade, and we've done also recently in cooperation with the European Parliament, we've already done so for toys, for instance, with specific provision on online sales. And I think we could use this also as a model in other types of legislation.
Would you like to add, Mr. Schiffer?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Two aspects from our side, more from DG Home, more from law enforcement cooperation. Online sales suffer generally in all areas, not just for pyrotechnics, the same under explosive precursors. When it is about ammonium nitrate, for instance, sold by wholesalers for farming purposes or whatever, legitimately, online sales suffer from the fact that you need the commercial, the private commercial business to report suspicious transactions. So you place a burden on them, which of course costs them money, doesn't earn them any money, and they do this for the sake of the overall security of society. You can impose this by law, so it's legal, it's done, they have to do it, but what you cannot ensure is that they do it efficiently and systematically, etc. So there is always an element of a certain weakness. And in times like now, when you hear also at the political level everywhere, we need to simplify, we have to do away with red tape from business, reporting duties. It's a hard uphill struggle to defend that there are legitimate and important and indispensable reporting duties also on private and commercial suppliers that need to be maintained. And these are, for instance, some of them. Just to giving you an illustration, I simplify a little bit, an illustration of what is the challenge in this field. Another area of challenge of just implementing existing effective rules is customs, custom controls, detection. How do you want, with millions in big ports, with millions of containers coming in every year, to ensure that everything is checked, or courier and parcel service, Amazon, DHL, these are big businesses, they have detection tools available, but they apply them only on a risk-based management side. But you never get more than 10% of all cargo actually checked. And this leaves big loopholes just by the very nature of the business. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have final 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your question, Mr. Antoci, and also impressive the story about Naples and the journalists being threatened, which is of course terrible. Your question was, what do you need specifically? Well, I can be quite brief in my answer, because what our wish would be is a total ban on heavy explosive shells, Cobra and those likes of produced fireworks. I don't see why, with only 1 or 2 festivals each year where Cobras can be used, why we need such a large production of these very, very heavy fireworks, which was already mentioned, have the same impact as a hand grenade. I just don't see the use of it. If we can get a total European ban on these products, then that would really help us. It would really take out the really heavy threat of these kinds of fireworks, without, in my opinion, obstructing the free flow of goods through our European territory. So that's actually my answer to your question.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all the speakers who participated in today's discussion. I would like to thank the colleagues who contributed to today's discussion. I apologize, Madame Sorel, we ran out of time. And that concludes our morning session. We will continue at 2:30. Thank you.